Why don't we go ahead and grab seats? And we'll get started in a second. Come on down if you want to find a seat. There's plenty of room. You need your parka in here. It's cold. Yeah, I think we'll do a quick roll call. And then we're gonna have some opening remarks from some of our key legislative leaders. And then we'll come back to Jen and I and just kind of give everyone that's either online or in the room just a quick description of how the run of show works in our meetings, and then we'll get going. So, Mary, can we do roll call?
Chair Bonham,
Here.
Vice Chair Nagami,
Here.
Member Karen Gear. Here. Member Fran Pavley. Here. Member Michelle Peralt. Here. Member Tina Thomas. Member Erica Zavaleta. We have a quorum.
Awesome. Hey, so one of the most remarkable things about the Wildlife Conservation Board, and I couldn't say since 1947 when it was created, but at least in my time participating with it, has been the leadership in the state legislature, both in the Senate and Assembly for the board. Part of that is expressed in each of our meetings because we have members or their delegated staff participating at the podium. But maybe more importantly is the consistent commitment to move funds to this board for purposes of doing good things around California. Just take a look at, since I've been director at the department and chair, how long Senator Pavley's been an awesome member of our board. Yeah. And yeah. And also Senator Stern, a longtime champion, and Catherine Moore as staff member who's participated so much. And today, I'd like to say a huge shout out and thanks for Senator Blakeslee, who's participating as a champion on behalf of the Department of Fish and Wildlife and current issues at play in the legislature. And over to you for your enthusiasm for the Wildlife Conservation Board.
That's right. Well, who doesn't love wildlife, right? So, I mean, it's exciting to be able to participate. Thank you for the introduction. My name's Catherine Blakespear, and it is my great honor to represent the 38th district. So this is a district that includes San Diego and Orange County. I have 60 miles of coastline in San Diego County. So it runs from Pacific Beach north into Mission Viejo in Orange County. And my district has had the good fortune of receiving over $10 million in investments from the Wildlife Conservation Board since 1990. And this is across a dozen different projects, including land for conservation at Dank Mountain, Holly Springs Ranch, and Pilgrim Creek Ecologic Reserve, as well as restoration work at Los Penasquitos Canyon, Trabuco Creek, and Tecolote Canyon. And this year I have a bill, SB 427, that guarantees that the $30 million that has been coming to the Habitat Conservation Fund continues to come indefinitely to the Habitat Conservation Fund. This is one of the few consistent sources of funding for the Wildlife Conservation Board. So it's really important that we continue to recognize it as a priority of the legislature and not have that funding 2 years ago was at risk of being swept during one of the budget crises that we're just recently facing. And I thought that was terrible and don't want that to happen again. So we need to have the legislature recommit to this funding source, which the voters approved in 1990. So it is voter approved. And I'd also like to express that I'm thrilled that this board will be coming to my district. So Jennifer Norris and I were discussing the idea of having the board meeting in the district. And I'm happy to invite you to the November 20th meeting at Miracosta College on the San Elijo campus, which is in Cardiff by the Sea, which is the community that I live in San Diego County. So that's the next Wildlife Conservation Board on November 20th. And after the meeting, members of the board will be invited to a guided tour of the lagoons in the area that have received grants from this very board. So the San Elijo Lagoon and the Buena Vista Lagoon have both received grants, and we'll be excited to host a tour. And I promise you an exciting time in Southern California and to see some of the fruits of your good work. So thank you again for allowing me to speak and say a few words and to be part of this august board.
And I should just add that the public will be invited to join that field trip as well, right? It'll be open to everyone. Yeah.
So I just thank you for your leadership, Senator Blakespear. It makes a huge difference. And I think that's true for both the board, the Department of Fish and Wildlife, and just broadly for California's public interest. Hey, so here's kind of run a show. We have a lot of folks who have been our partners a long time, so you're familiar. But for those either in the room or kind of dialing in virtually, we've got some typical board business you'll hear about, approval agenda, report, that kind of stuff, review of financial summaries. We move into consent calendar. Of course, if there's a request or a need, we can take off of consent calendar, but they're there for purposes of kind of moving efficiently because they're non-controversial. Then we'll get to presentation discussion items. On those, pretty short agenda today. We do have an executive session we'll be doing at the end. So for awareness, we'll adjourn, but the meeting won't be over. We'll come back from executive session. Our legal counsel will report, and then we'll close the meeting. That'll be the technical end of the meeting. Meanwhile, when we get to presentation, we'll go agenda item by agenda item. You'll see board staff come up and make a presentation. Great, beautiful photos. It'll take you on a tour around California. And almost always the board's work is very collaborative. People are having a celebratory moment because of all the hard work that's gotten the project to where it is. Sometimes there'll be a project partner that'll be part of that initial presentation. We'll come up for questions from board members to staff. Then we'll do a quick polling of the room and those online who'd like to speak. Get ready to fill out your speaker cards if you're, no, we're not doing speaker cards, okay? You line up here in the room. We'll get a sense of how many are in a queue so we can figure out if we need a time allocation. The board tends to not do that. But where we will end up is about 2 minutes if we need to kind of be managing our time. We'll hear public input. We'll come back up for discussion, possible motion amongst us as members. Sound like a plan, everyone? All right, Jen, over to you.
Approve the agenda.
Can we get a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll move.
And I'll second.
Chair Bonham,
Aye.
Vice Chair Nagami. Member Perot. Aye. Member Thomas. Aye. Member Pavle. Aye. Member Gear.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, I will give my executive director report. I'll be talking in a little bit about our strategic plan, so I'll put that on pause. And you will see our financials also in a later agenda item, but I still need to speak to it now, which is, WCB staff continue to be very busy with lots of things. But we are also in a bit of a holding pattern, waiting to find out whether and how much Proposition 4 funding is allocated to the board for spending this year. We had hoped that would come through the original budget. We opened our portal with great fanfare. We got buried in applications, which I think I told you about in May. That continues. Our current estimate is we have about $600 million in requests for about a $230 million ask from the legislature. So we are currently sort of sorting through those applications, identifying what we think are, the best of the best across regions, across ecosystems, across partners, using our strategic plan as sort of a framework for what is the most important to put forward. But this means, by definition, there will be hundreds of projects that won't get funded this year. Some can wait, which is good. Maybe we'll get more money next year. But some are just going to get disappointing news, which is hard for us and hard for our partners. But it's just the reality on the ground. We have an incredible amount of great work going on in California, and we can't fund it all. And then you add the federal situation on top of that. There's a lot of folks that are losing their federal funding or looking for funding from us that would normally have gone to the federal government. So it's just, it's kind of a perfect storm. So we're on hold. That's why our agenda is a little bit smaller. We do have some money to spend, largely from previous bond measures. The Habitat Conservation Fund money is still available to us, but that's not going to go very far. And a lot of those are fairly restricted in terms of what they can be spent on. So that's the status of where we are. Do you have a question about that?
I would just quickly say, neither Jen nor I mentioned this to drive your spirits down. It's just a realistic expectation setting for everyone involved. But what goes down can come up.
Right.
We go through cycles. Good projects will eventually get done. Stay the course. It's not a strategy, but keep hope.
I think that's right. And our goal really is to, as I said, like, make sure we're sharing what funds we do have across as many partners and opportunities as we can. So looking for the most cost-effective, et cetera. The only other thing I would share is that we were notified by the Department of Finance that we are undergoing this year, we'll be undergoing an audit of our Proposition 1 and Proposition 68 expenditures. So if you're a partner that got a project in that, you might be hearing from us. We're not particularly alarmed, but it's always just an extra workload and set of things we have to do to comply. I will say if we don't get funding, there's still a lot of great work that the board is doing. You know, most importantly, we're working with the Department of Fish and Wildlife on a whole bunch of ancestral land return projects. Those are very complicated. So the acquisition team will be plenty busy. We also do a lot of just basic real estate transactions on right of way and stuff like that. And additionally, our restoration team, they're managing 400 grants. As a reminder, we have about 50 people working for WCB. So they're still managing those grants that came through with that general fund. So we have work. We won't be sitting around, but we do hope that we're able to fund some good projects this year, and I'm hopeful. With that, I'll turn it back to you.
Any questions for Jen on Executive Director report? That takes us into an agenda item 4, which is if any board member has an update or a report or just something they want to share.
Sure. I have hopefully a brief one. A couple of things. One, on September 3rd, the Santa Monica Mountains National Recreation Area, that's part of the National Park Service, has done an amazing job on planting native seeds, and they're up to 20,000 of them for plants, and the timing is perfect as we try to restore especially the areas that are burned during the wildfires and put back native plants instead of having plants that are more likely to burn during the wildfires, like mustard and other ones like that. So if you're interested in a tour of it, I've set up one with the Park Service biologists on September 3rd down in the Santa Monica Mountains. You can just contact me. We have some spaces. And the other thing I wanted to share with you, one thing I've learned over the years is I've seen all these conservancies and different organizations around the state doing some amazing things. But one of the secrets of success, I think, for the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy has been their coalition building. The board meets, we actually meet monthly. So I represent LA County, but there's someone that represents Ventura County. The superintendent for the Santa Monica Mountains National Recreation Area is at every board meeting. The head of director for state parks for our region is at the board meeting and sits there. There's a representative from the Assembly and the Senate and the governor's office. We're there every meeting. And then they have at the same meeting an advisory committee. They don't have the final vote on anything, but they're there to express their opinions. There's a representative from 15 different cities there that overlap in the Santa Monica Mountain Zone, and other assembly appointments, Senate appointments, and governor's appointments. So that diversity, I think, has helped not only educate people, but they become champions of open space. And it's a nonpartisan issue. We work cooperatively with fire departments and other things like that. But I've seen over the years that that's been really helpful whether you're applying for grants or there's a bond measure or anything like that, to have that coalition. And we even work cooperatively with all the time Caltrans, like on the wildlife crossing. So don't think about how you can expand, because I look at some of the conservatives seem to be struggling a little bit, and maybe this is an opportunity to see how you can build those coalitions and encouragement. Can you imagine the Conservancy's been around for over 40 years, Santa Monica County Conservancy. Every month they have a meeting. And people all show up. I don't know what that's about. Our freeways are probably having problems. And I think that's it. And the wildlife crossing update, phase 1 over the 10-lane 101 freeway has been completed. Dirt put on it, native plants, recycled water, starting them. And we're on to phase 2. It's been held up a little bit. It'll be moving forward. But I also wanted to acknowledge to you one of the secrets of success of that is we had a major donor at the beginning that ended up really spearheading this project, and her name is Wallace Annenberg. She just died a few weeks ago, and so she championed this wildlife crossing. So we're on to phase 2. We think that'll move forward in early fall, working together with our coalition, but times are a little more tough, right? Whether it's tariffs or whether it's a variety of issues I won't go into. So that's my update for Southern California.
Senator, thank you. Having had the pleasure of lunch with Ms. Annenberg a couple of times, she's shaped Southern California, and all the animals that need to get from point A to point B across 101 will be beneficiaries from her.
And Director Bonham, you got invited on a helicopter tour over 10 years ago to see the Santa Monicas, and you said, oh, there's actually open space near Los Angeles. And he said, this is like, you could visualize how you could extend a crossing over the 101, connecting everything south of the 101 to the north of the 101 for miles. And this is your 10th anniversary
Yep,
of
and
that trip.
Here we are.
And so inviting someone from Sacramento who doesn't get out much, that's your other tip.
Yeah, it's true. No, Senator also mentioned no movement really starts from here or from on top down. We all do our work standing on what happens at the local level. And that's the cornerstone of a civil democracy. So thank you for pulling that out in your
you.
comments.
It's been a collaboration, hasn't it? A lot of work.
Any other board member comments? Okay, Jen, take us to the funding.
Yeah, so you'll see in your packet just this funding status of all our different funds. Also on consent are some recovery of funds, which will bring our balance to 198 million, which sounds like a lot. But as I mentioned, it's in a bunch of sort of smaller, more discrete pots. But we do have a fair amount of projects in the pipeline that will expend at least a good portion of what's available. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer. Nope.
Seeing none. Agenda item 6.
All right, I'll move into our strategic plan, which I am very pleased to announce that we have a final strategic plan, if approved today. WCB embarked on this journey to update our strategic plan around this time last year. And next slide, please. We had a very robust public process to gather input into what our strategic plan should say and what we should focus on. So we held 5 community workshops around the state. We held 2 rounds of tribal consultation, so sending letters to every California Native American tribe, offering them either a one-on-one meeting or the opportunity to participate in a tribal listening session. We held 4 of those. We had a 60-day public review period. We received 31 letters and had about 65 individual comments that were unique. Next slide, please. Just to give you a flavor of the kinds of comments we got, we did get a lot of really helpful notes on things that were said in a way that was weird and hard to understand. So we got some text changes that really improved clarity and made sure we were saying what we intended. We got a lot of comments on the targets. Those were a mixed bag. Many were just outright support for what we were already doing. We had a few that were asking for programs that we really can't fund, and we tried to include at the end of the document sort of what is not part of our purview, so that's clearer to folks. But that, we support things like urban parks is a great example, or ongoing funding for operations. Right now, we don't have the authority to do that through our funding, but we recognize the value of those. We had some requests for very specific, narrow targets for someone's sort of pet work, which we of course value, but what we looked at were the targets, making sure that they were inclusive and broad so that as funding comes and goes, we can be strategic about which kinds of projects will help us meet our targets. So we think we have some pretty solid buckets. They help us move forward on biodiversity, on climate change, on public access, but also give us the flexibility to, pick projects that may or may not be able to be funded at any given time. We had some comments on, and let me just say something I should have said earlier. One thing about Proposition 4 funding that's coming that is an unknown, we do hope that there will be funding. What is never clear is whether it will come with strings that are unexpected, right? So currently we have a few funding buckets, but member requests are always possible. And so that is one of the things that we don't have a lot of control over. If our funding is directed, we spend it in a particular way. And so we tried to structure our targets in a way that was allowing us to get the best projects that are in those kinds of buckets. We got some recommendations on process, some of which are things we're already doing, like advanced pay, providing more technical assistance. We will continue to work hard on and getting better and better. I'm very proud of WCB, but there's always room for our improvement, and we're committed to that. Getting out into the field is one of them. Having meetings in other parts of the state and helping people understand we're here for everyone is definitely a piece. And then we got a bunch of comments that were somewhat specific and better addressed through our guidelines. And we tried to make that more clear that this is a piece of our overall sort of who and what is WCB. There's a lot of information on our website that might get updated more frequently, and our guidelines are those. This is supposed to stand for 5 years, so we're trying to keep it at sort of a higher level. But overall, the comments we received were generally very favorable towards the strategic plan itself, but also, more broadly, the work that we do and support to continue being awesome. Next slide, please. I just want to give a special thanks to a whole bunch of folks on our team who really helped with both the workshops over, last fall. Mark Topping's been doing triple duty, getting a lot of things done. Haley Peckner helped us go through all the comments and make sure I didn't miss anything. Meredith on your staff did a beautiful job of the layout and the beautiful pictures. And then we had some really great partners in the field who helped us put on those workshops and mostly gave us the venues for free, which was fantastic. And with that, I would ask the board's approval of the strategic plan.
Just before roll call, I'd say sometimes not knowing if we have new participants in our space, a quick look at the past can really energize for the future. There's a moment where this board is only voting by the director of the Department of then Fish and Game, the director of the Department of Finance or delegee, and the president of the Fish and Game Commission. We're not that board. We look more like California. We have diversity of participation with legislative appointees and gubernatorially appointed members. And there's a moment not too long ago where we didn't really have a public strategic plan process, and we do. Both of those are good government improvements. So a quick look back really should keep us energized that we can make change. So, yep.
Thank you. This strategic plan is beautiful. First of all, I encourage folks to take a look. It really tells the visual story of California conservation. So kudos to the staff. You really put a lot into this. It's also very succinct with clear and understandable objectives, which I appreciated. all the stakeholders who gave input. It is much appreciated. I look in here and I see that priorities are included that folks talked about in these workshops. Personally, I am thrilled to see an emphasis on getting benefits to justice communities, increasing access to nature. These were some of the things that drove me to come serve here on this board. And one last note, this plan really reflects California values. It's refreshing to see a document that openly talks about being a champion for equity, talking about climate change openly, that it's not a bad word and it's not something to be avoided. So kudos to staff and to this administration for standing up for our values. I look forward to periodic updates on progress with this plan and also taking the show on the road to implement these outreach goals that we have to, especially to groups that don't traditionally know about what WCB does. Thanks.
I'll move we approve the strategic plan for the board from 2025 to 2030.
Second.
Chair Bonham,
Aye.
Vice Chair Nagami,
Aye.
Member Gear,
Aye.
Member Pavley,
Aye.
Member Peralt,
Aye.
Member Thomas. Aye. Motion passes.
And so this brings us to consent items, which are agenda items 7 through 14. And we will take public comment on this. So if you have an interest, please come up in queue. Or remind me, our technology help. Will folks be raising hands now virtually so you can track that?
Yeah, I asked him to do it now.
Okay, so please raise your hand. We'll close that in a couple of seconds. Any questions from a board member about any consent item?
I have a couple questions if I could. About the Shackelford number 14.
Okay.
I want to get some clarity about how, when it is that CAL FIRE decides to join and partner with the Wildlife Conservation Board. When does that occur? Maybe somebody from CAL FIRE can tell us what the public process is to decide which projects to engage in. That would be useful to me.
Okay. Anyone in CAL FIRE, or I see Joe kind of, why don't you come up to the,
I think he said his program lead might be on the line. Is that what you're saying? Okay.
I'm David Dodds with the Wildlife Conservation Board. I'm the project manager for Shackelford specifically. Kevin Kinnery from CAL FIRE is also on the line. You can answer the questions about what projects are selected.
Great.
Kevin, you should be able to mute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Kevin.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Goes
Oh,
through the
Kevin.
Federal Forest Legacy Program. Can you hear me?
could you maybe turn up his volume for the room? It's kind of faint. And then you're a little choppy, Kevin, but let's start over and see if we can get.
Okay, hopefully this works now. So Kevin Kinnery, Forest Legacy Program Coordinator with CAL FIRE. So every one of our projects that goes through the Federal Forest Legacy Program is evaluated based on the national core criteria. And this is scoring criteria that's developed by the United States Forest Service. And it's based on how important is the project. So how does the project align with environmental, social, and economic public benefits from protecting the project? The projects are also evaluated on how threatened they are. So how are they, how much threat level is there to conversion to non-forest uses. And then lastly, they're evaluated on how strategic they are. So how do they fit in with a larger landscape? Are they adjacent to already protected lands? Is there high alignment with national, state, and local conservation plans? So those are the main criteria. And then the department, we use a independent committee that evaluates our projects. And that committee is called the Joint Forestry Committee. And that committee is based on, it comprises a wide range of resource professionals, from resource conservation district professionals to registered professional foresters to NGOs like land trusts and Native Plant Society members, and to agency representatives from CAL FIRE, the United States Forest Service, and the Department of Fish and Wildlife. So every project is presented to that Joint Forestry Committee, and they evaluate and rank our projects based on alignment with the national scoring and national core criteria. And so they provide us recommendations of which projects to put forward. And then we take their recommendations and go to the director of CAL FIRE, and the director of CAL FIRE makes the final approval of which projects to put forward to the Federal Forest Legacy Program. After that, projects go through a review and evaluation from a national panel assembled by the United States Forest Service. So there's a lot of involvement in how these projects get selected and eventually funded through the Forest Service.
So is there a public process that joins that independent committee process?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay. That's
And
the only
just-
question I had.
Sorry, just a follow-up question on that. So I see that there's a management plan that gets reviewed and approved by CAL FIRE. Do WCB staff and or Fish and Wildlife staff have input on the restrictions on the habitat protections in that plan?
Yes, CAL FIRE, we review and evaluate the management plan and approve it before the project closes. We also do negotiate with the landowner regarding special habitat management zones, like enhanced riparian management zones, meadow protection areas, forest reserves. These are common things that we protect. In addition to conserving the property, we also have these additional protections that we implement through the forest management plan.
So the biologists at Fish and Wildlife don't participate in that at all? Or the people in the timber group at Fish and Wildlife?
David, feel free to help us.
Typically, the answer is no.
I'm Stu McMorrow. I run, I'm the staff chief for Wildfire Resilience Program, and the Forest Legacy Program, which is what we're talking about today, is one of the programs I manage. Habitat conservation, wildlife features, and other elements that Kevin just talked about. Of course, they're all protected through the regular means through which the state protects those things. If there are not additional protection measures added to the conservation easement, then there is no involvement from Fish and Wildlife or other wildlife or, special plant species or other interested parties. They're just not part of it. No, it's not that we don't want them, but every easement's different and they all protect different things, and every property is uniquely different. And so we do pride ourselves in looking at that aspect. But if it's not funded by Wildlife Conservation Board, for instance, or Fish and Wildlife or others, which we've partnered with many times, and in those cases, those entities do have a place to help negotiate the easement, but they're not always part of the easement. So it's not a yes, it's not always a no, it's a maybe. I hope that answers your question.
And just to put a point of clarity, WCB provides this, like we do this work as a service to CAL FIRE. So to some extent, we're implementing their work and helping to spend their money. Sometimes when we put money in, then we do make sure that it meets more of our needs, but a lot of these are forest resilient and climate projects that we're helping them implement. Do you want to add to that, David?
I think that is a good jumping off point to further answer Director Thomas's question, which is that this is the time for the public input
Mhm.
on the CAL FIRE projects. Just like the WCB will get an application, do the diligence and bring it to this board, and that involves public participation. The Public Resources Code allows the Wildlife Conservation Board to hear these matters for CAL FIRE. In all of the CAL FIRE projects I have worked on, which this is the third, so it's a limited data set, right? There has been public participation in this board meeting, whether it is questions from the board members, the public, or the county that the property resides in. WCB's process is that we post the board meeting agenda and we send a notice to the affected county. The elected officials are also CC'd on that notice. In the case of Shackelford, we had regular communication over the last 2 weeks with the county staff and County Board of Supervisors about this project and what this project does. So CAL FIRE selects the projects and develops them to get to the point where we can have this public discussion.
It's helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Right. So a few board member questions on one of consent item. Looking around, let's turn to those. I can't tell if that's a queue over in the side of the room. Yep. So come on up. And you're not required to, but if you're comfortable, please let us know your name, which agenda item you have comments on, if you want to offer a affiliation, you work for an organization, whatever. 2 minutes is kind of a great target. And then we'll go to the next in queue. Then we'll go to virtual. Anyone that has their hand raised, that queue's closed and it'll be for consent item comments.
Thank you. My name is Shelton Douthit. I'm the Conservation Director for the Feather River Land Trust, and I'm commenting on item 12, the big grizzly acquisition. It's a wildlife corridor effort, and we're very, very excited about it. But the main thing I wanted to say was this is my one opportunity every transaction to thank the WCB staff that we're working with. Celestial Reisner is fabulous, and we again feel like she's one of our own. And also Daniel Vasquez, John Walsh, and I also wanted to shout out Kevin Canary at CAL FIRE. We're using a mixture of WCB and CAL FIRE funding. Again, for me, the team effort, this is the only way we can make these things happen. This is my 32nd year doing conservation in California. And I just really want to take this moment to thank you all for supporting our efforts. And I also wanted to just shout out a new partner. This is a wildlife focused project. Its emphasis is on a wildlife corridor within a very important forest that creates a wildlife or a wildland urban interface between the city of Portola and a housing development on Grizzly Road. It's a very fire prone area, one of the few areas that didn't burn during the Dixie Fire. So it's very important we have a managed forest in the mix of a wildlife movement corridor. And I just wanted to shout out our new partner, because the only way we do our business is to partner. And we have a new partner, and I'd like to introduce Sean Hill.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sean Hill, and I'm the President and Chief Executive of Sierra Nevada Journeys, a 501c3 nonprofit organization serving Northern California and Northern Nevada. This is a unique transaction, I think, in that as a successor grantee, our organization, which is focused on getting kids into nature, will become the stewards of this 1,000+ acre property. So it's very exciting. And again, I think it's unique. I just wanted to tell you a little bit more about us and what we do. It'll be no surprise to anybody here, I'm sure, this generation of kids is growing up indoors and behind screens. They're spending less time outside than any previous generation before them at the very moment that wildfire and climate change are the defining challenges of their lifetime. They need more than facts and figures. They need connection to the land to the science, and to the sense of stewardship that comes from learning in the outdoors. That's where Sierra Nevada Journeys comes in. For nearly 20 years, we've been bringing tens of thousands of young people, many from Title I schools, in fact, most from Title I schools and underserved communities, into the outdoors to learn science, build confidence, and discover their role in caring for the natural world. Today's opportunity is historic, thanks to the vision and leadership of the Feather River Land Trust, and with the support of this board and the staff of the Wildlife Conservation Board, Sierra Nevada Journeys has the chance to steward more than 1,000 acres, tripling the land holding that we currently have with our camp in the Feather River watershed. This land will not only protect critical habitat and resilience for forests and watersheds, but it will become a living classroom where future generations can learn, explore, and prepare to tackle the challenges ahead. Our vision is simple but powerful, that every child, regardless of background, has the chance to grow up with the kind of experiences on this land that change lives, build resilience, and inspire stewardship. With your support, we will make this vision come true. And for anyone who is paying attention, if this story inspires you, please reach out to me if you'd like to offer your support to Sierra Nevada Journeys. I can be reached through our website at sierranevadajourneys.org. And I'd be happy to host anybody here if you ever want to come up to the watershed and see our beautiful camp in this amazing Big Grizzly Creek corridor. Please reach out for a tour. Thank you very much.
Right. No queue in the room. And can we go over to see if we have any hands raised for the virtual queue? Great. So we'll come back up to the podium, see if there's a board member motion to approve the consent items, agenda items 7 through 14.
I'll move the consent items.
I'll second.
Chair Bonham,
Aye.
Vice Chair Nagami,
Aye.
Member Gear,
Aye.
Member Pavley,
Aye.
Member Peralt,
Aye.
Member Thomas,
Aye.
motion passes.
Congratulations.
So I think that dialogue showed us that it is almost impossible to put things on consent because there are no projects that don't have a great story. This project, this next one, San Diego Bay Salt Marsh Enhancement Project was actually on consent and I moved it to present because I love how it showcases an opportunity to maybe accomplish something and put a pin in it. So Don Crocker, please present.
Great, thank you, Jen. This proposal is to consider the allocation for a grant to the Conservation Biology Institute for a cooperative project with Caltrans, California Department of Parks and Recreation, U.S. Department of Defense, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Port of San Diego, and USS Midway Museum to survey, map, and enhance coastal habitat by controlling non-native European sea lavender and Algerian sea lavender within coastal wetland and wetland to upland transitional habitat adjacent to the San Diego Bay within the cities of Chula Vista, National City, Imperial Beach, and Coronado in San Diego County. Next slide, please. So San Diego Bay is the third largest protected natural bay in California. It's located within one of our largest metropolitan areas, and the growth of the city of San Diego and the surrounding areas over the last century has led to the loss of 90% of the salt marshes and 50% of the mudflats originally in the bay. This habitat was crucial for supporting several species that are currently designated as threatened or endangered, and the marshes also help maintain ecological functions in the bay by filtering excess nutrients and pollutants from runoff. Recognizing the importance of these areas, most of the remnant wetlands have been given protected status. And while the wetlands within San Diego Bay cover only a fraction of their historical extent, they still play an important role in preserving biodiversity and supporting local and migratory wildlife. Next slide, please. But even though almost all the wetlands in the bay are now protected from development, there are still threats to its ecological integrity. The recent introduction of 2 non-native and highly invasive species within the genus Limonium has put this ecosystem at risk. European and Algerian sea lavender are highly productive plants that generate large quantities of seed and thrive in highly saline soils. If left unchecked, they create dense mats that displace native vegetation, resulting in permanent loss of breeding and foraging habitat for wildlife. And the pictures on the right, you can see the bottom right's a close-up of the actual Limonium. And the top right is the sort of darker purplish shade is the Limonium pushing out the native species. And it's not just within the tidal zones where these plants can cause problems. They are very versatile and it can impact salt marsh, upland transition areas, coastal dunes, and riparian areas. Next slide, please. The project you are considering today is the culmination of an effort that began in 2021 to eradicate Limonium from the bay. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service 1,400 acres and found infestations in an area of around 118 acres. They implemented treatments on close to 97 acres, but their funding ran out before they can complete the work in the impacted areas. This loss of funding comes at a critical time for the project's success. By not completely eradicating Limonium within the bay, the currently infested areas will continue to pose a threat for reintroduction of the invasive plants into the treated areas. With the federal funds exhausted and an augmentation not possible, stakeholders in the region have approached the WCB for the funding to complete the final 21 acres and to survey an additional 69 acres to ensure the infestation has not spread. Next slide, please. Yeah, removal of the Limonium will be done without herbicides. Tarping, which solarization is also called, will be used where the infestation is dense, and you can see that process going on in the picture in the upper right. While hand pulling or flame treatment will be used in sparser areas. The treated areas will then have follow-ups twice a year for a period of about 4 years to make sure that all the treatments have taken. The goal will be to treat in all the mapped areas and achieve at least a 99% reduction in the Limonium present and pretty much eradicating Limonium from the entire San Diego Bay. Next slide, please. The effect this effort will protect and improve habitat for at least 15 listed or rare species and improve water quality within the bay by filtering excess nutrients and pollutants that will benefit oyster reefs and seagrass beds. Therefore, staff recommends the board approve this project as proposed. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. And in the audience is Jesse Vinge from the Conservation Biology Institute who would now like to address the board.
On those that might like to make public comment on this agenda item, now's the time to raise your hand in the virtual queue or queue up on the side of the room here.
We have 3 raised hands. Justin, you can unmute yourself.
Hold
Oh,
on. Go ahead and queue up. We'll call you in a second.
Okay, hi, you can hear me? Everyone can hear me?
Yeah.
I'm short, so these don't always work for me. I wanted to, on behalf of Conservation Biology Institute, and then all of our partners, Don mentioned them, but we have a number of partners, United States Fish and Wildlife Service, Department of Defense, the Navy, California Department of State Parks, let's see, USS Midway Museum, Caltrans, a private property partner, and several cities. We all want to thank you for considering this project for funding. We started it in 2021. We have made significant progress. We didn't realize just how effective the methods that we are using ended up being. And we're hopeful that with continued funding over the next few years that we can actually achieve eradication in some areas, because these plants, if left untreated, will completely eliminate habitat, completely take over the marsh, and you just don't have any marsh left. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Great. Any questions from board members for staff or our project partner?
Thank you for the presentation. Seems like a great project and looking forward to supporting it. I'm interested, as this board we continue our education about how to deal with invasive species. There's no herbicides being used, no herbicide questionnaire. Is that a function of just herbicide not being effective here, or is the habitat too sensitive? What are some of the factors that went into what the treatment method is?
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, the main partner, so Fish and Wildlife, United States Fish and Wildlife Service, Carolyn Lieberman and some partners down in San Diego County did some research testing the use of herbicides versus hand pulling and tarping. And they found that the hand pulling and tarping was significantly more effective than the herbicide. use. So you can achieve 100% kill with the tarping, whereas with the herbicide use, you don't. We have since added the flame treatments because post removal of the the plastic, you can achieve ongoing eradication in those areas. Over time, you might have a few come back in, but it's nothing like the herbicide use. It's just not as effective.
Quick question. So, thank you for working on this project because I know sorry, everybody can hear me. I know how difficult it is to get full eradication of invasive species. And so I'm kind of, when we look at the Spartina in Humboldt Bay or San Francisco Bay or European beachgrass, or Arundo, it's just really hard to actually knock it all out. So I guess my question is, are there other places that have successfully eradicated the sea lavender that you're modeling all of this on, or is this sort of a San Diego Bay issue?
You are right. Eradication is what we would love to achieve, but that is pretty impossible, especially in an area as large as where we're working. But what we do know is that localized eradication can occur, and there's a location in San Diego called Dog Beach. It's owned and managed by the city of San Diego, and they did achieve eradication there. And their infestation was really bad. And so it can be done with a lot of effort and time.
And what I will say too is we've actually funded other projects to do ammonium removal where we've achieved, you're right, we normally don't use the word eradication, we use the word control. But for this, it sort of fits. And we've had in the Central Coast, we've did some projects where we've got close to 100% removal of ammonium. The trick is just vigilance going because there's always potential for reintroduction. Now, when you basically wipe out all the ammonium in the surrounding areas, you dramatically lower the chance of reintroduction. But we have a 25-year management period, and they're going to have to stay on top of it to make sure it doesn't come back in. But we can basically, I put up the goal of 99%, and I think that's a very realistic achievement within the Bay.
Moving from board member questions, seeing none of the public queued up in the room, can we now call the folks queued up for public comment virtually?
Yes, we have 4 raised hands. Justin Stahl, you can unmute yourself.
Great, Justin. You'll see the 2-minute timer on the screen. Thank you, Justin.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Good morning, WCB. My name is Justin Stahl. I'm the biologist here at the San Diego Bay National Wildlife Refuge. 2.5 years ago, I attended a talk by Jesse Vinge and Conservation Biology Institute on the federally endangered salt marsh birdspeak, a fascinating plant that occurs along the edges of Southern California's coastal marshes. The populations of this plant are often small and isolated, and a key threat to their persistence is competition with invasive species, including non-native sea lavenders. Jesse's presentation introduced me to this simple and effective method of solarization to remove these invasive sea lavenders, and it left a lasting impression. Since then, I've successfully applied this technique to spot treat limonium and other invasives on the refuge. Thanks to previous work led by Jesse and CBI, we've seen a dramatic reduction in invasive sea lavender within the refuge, and I believe we're on a path towards complete local eradication, particularly in areas adjacent to these small isolated populations of salt marsh birdspeak. The support provided by WCB, which would fund not only work on the refuge, but on adjacent lands, is critical to fulfilling the refuge's mission to restore wildlife and plant resources and their habitat for the benefit of present and future generations. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Gabriella Kalbach, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, good morning. My name is Gabriella Kalbach. I'm an environmental specialist with the Port of San Diego. The Port of San Diego is in strong support of this project. As a partner on this effort to eradicate invasive limonium species from San Diego Bay, this funding would provide meaningful resources towards our eradication goal. Eradication of invasive sea lavender would restore and enhance some of the most critical habitat throughout San Diego Bay, which supports several special status species and hundreds of species of migratory birds. This project directly protects and restores biodiversity by preserving essential breeding and foraging habitat along the San Diego Bay coastline. As you heard in Dawn and Jesse's presentation today, eradicating invasive limonium around San Diego Bay involves several landowners, including the Port of San Diego, California State Parks, the National Wildlife Refuge, the U.S. Navy, and others. The leadership of Jesse Vinci and the Conservation Biology Institute is instrumental in coordinating across these agencies, developing standard protocols, and maintaining infestation sites over the life of the management period. The long-term management plan developed for this project is comprehensive and ensures preservation of these valuable coastal resources well into the future. Thank you for your consideration of this project. Funding opportunities for restoration projects like this one are crucial to maintaining California's most vulnerable ecosystems. The Port of San Diego strongly supports this project and is a proud partner on this salt marsh enhancement effort for the benefit of coastal habitats. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Doug Johnson, you can unmute yourself.
Good morning. Excuse me, board and staff. This is Doug Johnson with the California Invasive Plant Council. Thank you so much for your presentation. Dawn and Jesse, we strongly support this effort. We have been involved for several years with a major project in San Francisco Bay, working on both Algerian and European sea lavender. Now we're battling the seed bank at 80 plus sites over 6 counties, so we know how big of a task it can be. So we're somewhat jealous of your success down there. Great work. You've built a great partnership and coalition, which is totally what it takes for this level of landscape scale project. So congratulations, and we think this will be money well spent. Thank you.
And if I'm keeping track correctly, our last speaker, please.
Darren Smith, you can unmute yourself.
Hello, I'm Darren Smith. I'm a senior environmental scientist with California State Parks. And we just want to say we're a partner in this project, and we're very committed to supporting Jesse and the team in working on this problem. We feel like it's a really good choice for funding and sustained effort. It's a winnable situation, and we've already seen great improvement in the work that's been done there. So I just want to express our support for the project and continued funding.
Great, thank you. So just checking, we have no more speakers in the virtual queue.
There are no raised hands.
Yep, perfect. So coming back up to the board, any follow-up questions? Well, anyone comfortable making a motion?
A second.
Roll call, please.
Chair Bonham,
Aye.
Vice Chair Nagami,
Aye.
Member Gear,
Aye.
Member Pavley,
Aye.
Member Peralt,
Aye.
Member Thomas. Aye. Motion passes.
Right. So on to agenda 16, staying in San Diego.
Yep, we've got David Dodds talking about the White Atterbury acquisition.
Good morning again. The item is to consider the acceptance of a U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service non-traditional Section 6 grant, to approve a sub-grant of these federal funds, and to consider a Wildlife Conservation Board grant to the Escondido Creek Conservancy to acquire 160 acres of land for the protection of habitat for the federally threatened coastal California gnatcatcher and other threatened and endangered species. The White Atterbury property is located in San Marcos in San Diego County. It is bisected by South Twin Oaks Valley Road. The neighboring parcels are a mix of preserved open space, including the Wildlife Conservation Board funded Harmony Heights Preserve, along with high-density residential, rural residential, and commercial properties, and an elementary school. The western portion has undulating topography that includes several ridgelines and drainages, sloping in a northerly direction with elevations ranging from 850 to 1,200 feet above sea level. The eastern portion is accessed via a shared driveway to the school. This portion has steeper slopes in excess of 35% and elevations ranging up to 600 feet at the top of Franks Peak. Franks Peak is identified by the city of San Marcos as a primary ridgeline scenic resource. The property is zoned by the city's general plan with up to 68 residential units. The seller has pursued a development proposal in the early 2000s and has offered the property for sale to other developers for development or mitigation purposes. Habitats include, if we could get the next slide, please. Habitats include chaparral, Dagan coastal sage scrub, open Engelmann oak woodland, and emergent wetland. The White Atterbury property is part of a recognized wildlife corridor linking preserved lands to the east and south with open space lands to the north and west. There are 2 wildlife undercrossings under South Twin Oaks Valley Road, allowing wildlife to move within the open space system. Next slide, please. The property is part of the Gnatcatcher Core habitat covered by the City of Carlsbad Habitat Management Plan, Northwest San Diego County Multiple Habitat Conservation Program, and Natural Communities Conservation Plan. Please let's not repeat that again. The MHCP, NCCP, the Gnatcatcher, which is pictured on the bottom left, along with a green heron on the top. The Gnatcatcher is a federally protected threatened species. Nesting gnatcatchers have been observed on the neighboring Harmony Heights Preserve. Protecting White Atterbury property improves sustainability of these neighboring preserved lands that support gnatcatchers and provides an opportunity to confirm their presence on site. Reduce development pressure and allow gnatcatchers and other species to move across the landscape. Habitat for other threatened and endangered species includes the federally threatened Encinitas brachiosus and the southwestern pond turtle. Once acquired, Escondido Creek Conservancy will study the feasibility of using the on-site pond as a southwestern pond turtle nursery to raise young turtles before being relocated to other sites along the creek as a means to protect young turtles from predation. Public access is provided to the western portion via the city's trail system. The Conservancy is exploring student opportunities with the neighboring school, permitting educational site visits without the need to bus students. Escondido Creek Conservancy is an accredited land trust by the Land Trust Alliance, and it will own and manage the property as part of the Harmony Heights Preserve. At a minimum, the property will be monitored monthly, and the Conservancy will pursue funding for restoration and habitat enhancement as needed. The approved fair market value is $4.8 million. The proposal is for a $2.4 million WCB grant and a $2.4 million U.S. Fish and Wildlife Section 6 grant. Staff recommend approving the project as proposed. And with us today on Zoom are Ann Van Leer, Executive Director of the Escondido Creek Conservancy, and Kyle Rice from CDFW.
Well, while we come back up to the board to see if there are questions for staff, if you'd like to queue up in the room for public comment, or if you're online, please raise your hand. We'll close that virtual queue in a second. Any questions for staff, board members? Okay, seeing nobody in the room lining up, could we check and see if there are any virtual hands raised?
We have one raised hand. Ann Van Leer, you can unmute yourself.
Thank you.
Hi, I just wanted to say thank you for your support of this project. This has been a long time coming. We've actually had this property on our priority list for about 15 years, and we've been very interested in seeing this day come, and appreciate that the Wildlife Conservation Board has a vision to see the connections between these sites. So many years ago, you funded what we now call Harmony Heights, and now you're funding White Atterbury. What that map doesn't show completely is that the city of San Marcos has additional open space to the west. So White Atterbury actually connects to that open space system, which connects into the Carlsbad system. So we're very excited to see this property come together And thank you very much for your support.
Thank you. Just checking, there are no other hands raised virtually.
There are no raised hands.
Coming back up for any discussion or questions. Looking to my left and my right, Danny.
Just to recognize, I'm just really excited that WCB is supporting a project like this. I'm in Southern California, did SoCal conservation for a long time, and there's disappearing open space and habitat down there. And if you just look at the surrounding area, there's urbanization and development happening and pressures coming in on all sides. So the more we can do projects like this to sort of keep that at bay, I'm just really glad that we're funding something like this. So, and with that, I will move the items to approve.
Make a second.
Second. I'll second.
Perfect, thank you, Tim.
Chair Bonham,
Aye.
Vice Chair Nagami,
Aye.
Member Gear,
Aye.
Member Pavley,
Aye.
Member Peralt,
Aye.
Member Thomas. Aye. Motion passes.
Okay, I'm going to invite up Michael Shaw to present on Elfin Acres, which will sound weirdly similar to what we just heard about.
Tolkien-esque.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. And yeah, I'll try not to repeat the same items that David Dodd just presented on. But this is a similar project that also benefits the gnatcatcher, which is not too far from the project that David just presented. So the Elfin Acres project is an acquisition proposed by the Escondido Creek Conservancy for the purchase of 96 acres of important wildlife habitat, also utilizing Section 6 funding. The property is an in-holding within the Escondido Creek Conservancy's 910-acre Keithley Preserve, located in the Elfin Forest community within the unincorporated area of San Diego County, west of the city of Escondido. The surrounding Keithley Preserve was purchased previously with funds from WCB, Section 6, SANDAG, SDG&E, and other private funding. The purchase of the Elfin Acres property will protect the core of the preserve and provide wildlife connectivity and secure public access over the property. Next slide, please. The Elfin Acres property consists of moderate to steeply sloping hillsides and is bisected by the Escondido Creek. The property includes mostly Diegan coastal sage scrub, chaparral habitat, and southern sycamore riparian woodland. The current use of the property is privately owned and utilizes natural open space with plans to add the property to the surrounding Keithley Preserve, also with goals of restoring areas of the property back to native habitat, including riparian restoration within the Escondido Creek. The property also includes a public trail connecting to other trails within the Keithley Preserve. The preserve offers trails through a forested area along Escondido Creek and is used for community events like hikes and volunteer restoration projects. Once the acquisition is complete, the Conservancy will codify the trail segment over the Elfin property as part of the Keithley Preserve, securing public access and compatible recreational uses over the Elfin Acres property. Next slide, please. So the property supports the California coastal gnatcatcher, southwest pond turtle, and western spadefoot toad, along with other important species. The property directly supports the City of Carlsbad Habitat Conservation Program and Natural Communities Conservation Plan, which was created to allow for economic development within the city while establishing a system of open spaces and reserves to protect native species and habitats in the region. Over the past decade, the Conservancy has purchased thousands of acres that it now manages for the benefit of nature and the protection of wildlife habitat. The property will remain under the ownership of the Escondido Creek Conservancy and will be managed as part of the surrounding 910 Keithley Preserve. Next slide, please. The fair market value of the property was approved by the Department of General Services for a total of $2,110,000. WCB will provide $1,045,000 and the United States Fish and Wildlife Service will provide the remaining match funding of $1,045,000 under Section 6. Staff recommend that the project is approved as proposed in the agenda. And again, with us today is Ann Van Leer, Executive Director of the Escondido Creek Conservancy, as well as Kyle Rice from CDFW. CDFW, who can help assist with any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Okay, if you're in the room and you'd like to make public comment, please come up in queue. If you're online, please raise your hand. We'll get to you in a second. And board members, any questions about the project or staff presentation? Seeing no one here in the room queuing up for public comment, do we have any raised hands virtually?
There are no raised hands. I apologize. We have Ann Van Leer. You can unmute yourself.
Me again. I wanted to follow up on something that somebody said earlier about outdoor education and getting kids outside. Well, a lot of times the properties we purchase are in areas that don't meet the disadvantaged criteria numbers. But in this case, and a lot of our other properties, we're actually bringing kids to these properties that are from disadvantaged Title I schools. And in the case of Elephant Acres, we have a nearby interpretive center on the Keithley Preserve where we run a program with Escondido schools where every third grader comes out to these properties. And a lot of them is for the first time for them to come out and see nature in their own backyard. I think for a lot of land trusts, what's always wonderful is after we purchase properties with help from WCB and the Fish and Wildlife Service, we are finding amazing number of species we did not know were there before. And in the case of Elephant Acres, in case of the Keithley Preserve, we're finding Southwest pond turtle populations that none of us knew were there. It's just super exciting. And none of this happens without the support of the Wildlife Conservation Board. And we appreciate right now is a kind of a difficult time, but understand that we have to take a long view on California's future. And really thank you today for your help.
Thank you, Ann. Great. Just checking no other hands raised virtually. And we'll come back up to see if there is a discussion or questions.
There are no more raised hands.
I'm just happy to move the item. It's always nice to fill in the hole in a preserve. And it's super exciting that there's public access in this as well. So thank you to the staff and the nonprofits working on this.
And I'll second the motion.
Chair Bonham,
Aye.
Vice Chair Nagami,
Aye.
Member Gear,
Aye.
Member Pavley,
Aye.
Member Peralt,
Aye.
Member Thomas. Motion passes.
All right.
Heading out to the desert.
Amy Henderson is going to come talk to us about the Joshua Tree Conservation Coalition and Monitoring Augmentation Grant proposal.
Good morning, everyone. So this proposal is to consider the allocation for an augmentation in the amount of $1,618,000 to the Mojave Desert Land Trust to extend the work of the Joshua Tree Conservation Coalition and Monitoring Grant, which was developed in response to the passing of the Western Joshua Tree Conservation Act in 2023. The grant occurs over the range of the Western Joshua Tree, and we had a related augmentation for tribal engagement already on the consent calendar today. Next slide, please. So the Joshua Tree Conservation Coalition and Monitoring Grant involved two parts. The first was the formation of the Joshua Tree Conservation Coalition, and the second was conducting a range-wide population monitoring study. So the coalition has been formally established, bringing together conservation biology experts, land managers, agency partners, and tribal representatives to collaboratively develop and centralize knowledge, best practices, and conservation strategies for the Western Joshua Tree. The augmentation will extend the coalition for an additional 2 years in order to provide documentation that will list a set of recommendations and best practices for use by land managers and state and federal agencies. The augmentation will also fund at least 100 additional monitoring plots for the population monitoring study and provides an opportunity to enhance our understanding of demography by exploring a new aging method for Joshua trees. So preliminary analysis from the 99 established plots confirms as you go up in elevation, there are more individuals that were reproduced from seeds. The other alternative to seed production is cloning, which is also a method used by Joshua trees. So seed reproduction allows the species to increase its genetic diversity, whereas clonal reproduction offers a way for the species to persist, but with less genetic diversity. Understanding where and how the Joshua trees use the two modes of reproduction helps unravel how the species can persist through variable climate conditions such as prolonged droughts. Previously, it was not possible to age Joshua trees, so we could not tell how long they had lived and reproduced. Adding the additional 100 monitoring plots provides the opportunity to add this information to the project, enhancing our understanding of Joshua tree populations. The additional plots will also increase the sensitivity and confidence in the statistical analysis. So staff recommends the board approve the augmentation as proposed. With us today online to answer any questions is Kelly Urbanson, Executive Director from the Mojave Desert Land Trust, and in person from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife is Senior Environmental Scientist Drew Kaiser.
Great. Just if you're in the room for public comment, please come on up. If you're virtually wanting to make public comment, now's the time to raise your hand. And I can see a question from the dais, Catherine.
Yeah, are the plots all on public land or public and private?
It's a mix, but mostly public.
Thank you.
I just had a question about the budget because this is sort of doubling or a little bit more than doubling the original grant in an augmentation, which is pretty significant. So I'm curious, you know, what you learned that required twice the budget. And also I recognize you're adding 100 plots, but is 2 years of monitoring going to be enough for those plots? Or like 2 years down the road, are you expecting another request for monitoring?
I will take a stab at this, but I'm going to let Kelly talk about this because when Kelly initially did this grant, I don't know if anyone has ever done monitoring out in the desert. I have had the privilege of doing that, and I can tell you, you look at a map and you think, oh, it won't take, you know, a long time to get out there, and it takes forever. And so a lot of the setup of the initial plots, there just wasn't enough money budgeted. So that's part of the reason there's the need. But I do believe, and hopefully Kelly has a better answer to this, but I do believe that once these monitoring plots get going, that there will be additional, like they will be monitored. We'll probably pay for the, you know, the 2 years of monitoring, but there will probably be additional monitoring.
Also, just for a backdrop, and I may get this wrong, so correct me, but this is funding that was a specific appropriation in an earlier budget for this purpose. So it's kind of on top of, it's one of those examples of of what our executive director said at the beginning. Any other questions?
Yeah, one quick question. When you talk about plots, what are we talking about in terms of size? Are they all varied or?
No, they're all the same. Write down the plot size, but they are all.
Yeah, they're 50 meter by 50 meter plots, and they're standardized and throughout the range. So,
Thank you.
Okay. We're good on questions for the moment. I don't see anyone in the room wishing to make public comment. Do we have any hands raised in the virtual queue?
Yes, we have one raised hand. Kelly Urbison, you can unmute yourself.
Thank you. Hi, I just wanted to, if you wanted me to further answer that question that was posed to Amy, I'm happy to do so.
Go for it.
So I just wanted to talk a little bit about what Amy was alluding to. So the premise of this project is to establish baseline monitoring plots that hopefully we'll be able to read long into the future to look at long-term demographic changes in the Western Joshua Tree. So this effort is establishing, our goal was establish at least 200 plots, these 50-meter by 50-meter plots throughout the range, so that every, we're thinking probably 7 to 10 years, the plots could be reread. That's about as much time as you need for Joshua trees to see much change in their demography. So we were able to get 100 plots established with the first part of our grant. And now we're hoping to get that second 100 established, so we have a really good sample size to move forward with.
Cool.
I'm happy to elaborate if that's helpful.
You got a lot of head nods here at the podium.
Okay.
So come
Thank
back
you
up
so
to,
much.
let me just check that there's no other hands raised while we come back up to the podium to see if there's discussion or a motion. Any other questions, board members? Okay.
I'll
Not-
move approval of file item 18 on Joshua Tree Conservation Coalition and monitoring.
I'll second.
Chair Bonham,
Aye.
Vice Chair Nagami,
Aye.
Member Gear,
Aye.
Member Pavley,
Aye.
Member Peralta,
Aye.
Member Thomas.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Great. Thank you. I'd like to invite Don Crocker up to present on the Big Canyon Coastal Wetland Restoration Project.
Thank you, Jen. This proposal is to consider the allocation for a grant to the Newport Bay Conservancy for a cooperative project with CDFW, the City of Newport Beach, the California Coastal Conservancy, and the California Ocean Protection Council to restore historical salt marsh, the Big Canyon Creek riparian corridor, and transitional wetland habitats that will benefit several threatened and endangered species and improve climate resiliency within the Upper Newport Bay Ecological Reserve in the city of Newport Beach in Orange County. Next slide, please. Okay. The Upper Newport Bay Ecological Reserve is a 752-acre property consisting of salt marsh, mudflat, and estuary habitats. It houses one of the most intact tidal wetland systems in Southern California and supports a high level of biodiversity. It is a particularly important resource for local and migratory shorebirds and waterfowl. Big Canyon, which is on the map on the upper right, highlighted in yellow, is the largest undeveloped area in the eastern half of the reserve. Historically, the canyon would have had high-quality habitat that transitioned from tidal marsh to riparian corridor and coastal sage scrub. Unfortunately, due to a number of stressors, Big Canyon was altered to the point that its hydrology and species composition bore little resemblance to its pre-developed state. Work to restore the canyon began over a decade ago. Phase 1, which was completed in 2017, restored the upper third of the Big Canyon Creek watershed, while Phase 2 remediated the middle third. The project you are considering today is what the project team considers to be the third and final phase of Big Canyon's restoration. It will restore the hydrology of the lowest portion of the creek and install native habitat where the canyon meets the bay. Next slide, please. Over the last 100 years, the canyon has been subjected to the effects of land use decisions in and around Newport Bay. Water quality degraded due to upstream urban development, which created polluted runoff that would enter Big Canyon Creek, and by the seepage of naturally occurring selenium that accumulates in wetland sediments and aquatic food webs. The canyon was used for grazing and agricultural activities that degraded habitat and introduced invasive plants and insects. And the lower canyon marsh plain and riparian areas were used to dump dredge and fill materials. All these changes altered Big Canyon Creek's hydrology so that peak flows increased during storm events, and the normally intermittent creek provided year-round dry weather flows, creating a situation that favored the introduction of invasive plants over native species that had evolved to adapt to very different conditions. Next slide, please. The project builds on previous restoration phases by first reestablishing an approximation of Big Canyon Creek's historical hydrology in the lower portion of the watershed. This will reduce the accumulation of selenium eliminate a freshwater pond that does not belong in the canyon, protect intertidal salt marsh habitat from polluted water, and restore the natural tidal flow, which will create elevation gradients for sea level rise adaptation. The extensive infestation of non-native plants will then be removed and replaced with native species. Next slide, please. When the project is completed, the restored hydrology and tidal flow will improve the water quality of a major tributary to Newport Bay and create conditions that allow for the restoration of 14 acres of salt marsh, transitional freshwater marsh, riparian, upland, and wet alkaline meadow habitats that will benefit 12 listed species found within the canyon and enhance the estuary's resilience in response to climate change. Therefore, staff recommends the board approve the project as proposed. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. In the audience is Newport Bay Conservancy Board Member Eugenia Yoon and Operations Director Heather Sislag, who would now like to address the board. Thank you.
Great. So while we get that ready, if you're in the room and you want to make public comment in a moment, come on down. If you're online and you want to make public comment, go ahead and get your hand raised. And just for like me predicting, the partners may get some questions, why the funding match here and why not more from some of the other partners? So please, yeah.
Sure, thank you. And I'd like to thank the entire Wildlife Conservation Board. This is one of our first times up here to receive funding from this board, and we're really appreciative of it if received. We have been a nonprofit organization, a friends group for over 50 years that fought for the protection of this upper Newport Bay. And now we consider ourselves in this restoration area, knowing that just by conserving these 30 by 30 spaces, it's not enough, that we really have to bring back the habitat and make sure these ecosystems are really functioning efficiently. So we're really happy, not just for 50 years of bringing people to these coastal wetlands and educating them on the importance, but actually doing this really complicated work of restoring these tidal wetlands, removing this dredge fill that was put there originally to water ski and do things in the back bay that weren't environmentally focused. And now we can bring back and restore this tidal marsh area, restore this riparian stream, and really connect people to this environment. We've had the fortunate time already to start growing some of the plants and species, connecting our tribal communities, the Quiche, Gabrielino Quiche Nation, and some other partners and students, and we're excited for this final phase. Thank you.
My name is Eugenia Yoon. I'm a recent board member to Newport Bay Conservancy. I actually joined the board in order to support this Big Canyon Phase 3 project. Before I was a board member, I was also a volunteer. Many decades ago, I was an intern at Newport Bay Conservancy before they were called that. And prior to that, I was actually a longtime Newport Beach resident. The part of this project that I think is most exciting to me is the fact that Orange County is one of the most highly populated counties in the country and in the state of California. So the thousands of Title I students that are able to come down to the space to be able to honor the wildlife and to hopefully become stewards of wildlife and to become a wildlife biologist like I also became, I think is very, very exciting. So we really appreciate your support and for bringing us out here today.
Great. So any other public commenters, if you want to go ahead and queue up in the room or virtually? Coming back up to board members if there are questions.
Thank you for this presentation. I've been down to that area and can attest to the importance of nature in Orange County. I was born in Orange County, lived down there for a long time. I would be proud to support a project like this. I also think that in the future, it'd be great if all the stakeholders would sort of chip in for projects like this. To see that the city of Newport Beach is putting in $150,000 for this. If you look on a map, Upper Newport Bay is pretty close to Fashion Island. It's pretty close to pretty big hotels. I think the people that visit Newport Beach and who live in Newport Beach benefit from the ecosystem services of Newport Bay. They benefit from access to nature and the beautiful calming impact of the scenery. So I hope in the future we can encourage stakeholders to put a little bit more skin in the game. That's just a comment. Thank you.
Right, so we did not include this is phase 3. It's a phase 1 for us, but this is the third phase of this project, and many millions have been spent on the upper 2/3 of the watershed. Just the way our rules are for considering something as match, it happened too soon or too far prior to this project, but many millions of dollars have been spent by other agencies. As a matter of fact, we've been wanting to get WCB staff, been talking to these people for about 7, 8 years, trying to get involved and, basically give them a grant, and they didn't need it because they were doing great fundraising everywhere else. So it really was sort of, we do this a lot, especially in the South Coast. It's like, okay, Coastal Conservancy will take this one, we get the next one. And it cuts down the bureaucracy and the tape. Rather than having 2 separate grants per project, we just do one. So I appreciate it. And there's always if more stakeholders want to put money in, it's always wonderful. But there has been a lot of other money other than WCB that has flown to this project. We just can't really claim it as match.
That's helpful context. Appreciate that.
Don, and to step into the vice chair's last comments, I would just also observe often against the backdrop of regularly legitimate concern about how government provides benefit and whether government does do essential things for the public. Sure enough, here, government is producing a pretty large project from the state level to support what will be local, city, and other benefits. So government is here to provide essential services.
And I just want to note in this 14-acre footprint, about 4 of those acres are City of Newport Beach property. The rest is California Department of Fish and Wildlife property. The phase 1 and phase 2 were located just on City of Newport Beach property. So we've been working with those landowners for the past decade. So we're really happy, again, like you said, coordination, collaborations between the California Coastal Conservancy, Ocean Protection Council, City of Newport Beach, the Department of Fish and Wildlife, our conservancy, and then just like you said, private funders. How we are able to start doing these large-scale projects is we did get on a donor donating $250,000 to help us do some of these larger scale restoration projects that are necessary in the upper Newport Bay or these coastal zones that are heavily urbanized and disturbed to make sure they're functioning effectively. Thank you.
Right. Not seeing any other public queued up in the room. Do we have any virtual hands raised?
There are no raised hands.
Any other questions, board members, discussion? Leaving space for a motion, seeing no discussion. I'll make a motion. We approve the agenda item as proposed by staff.
Second.
Second it.
Chair Bonham,
Aye.
Vice Chair Nagami,
Aye.
Member Gear,
Aye.
Member Pavley,
Aye.
Member Perot,
Aye.
Member Thomas,
Aye.
motion passes.
Thank you. I'd like to invite Kurt Malchow up to present on transforming the Point Reyes National Seashore.
Thank you and good morning, board members. This proposal is to consider the allocation for a grant to the Nature Conservancy for a cooperative project with the National Park Service and the Federated Indians of Great and Rancheria to transform nearly 17,000 acres of the Point Reyes National Seashore in Marin County to a more continuous landscape of native coastal grassland and coastal scrub to enhance wildlife, protect cultural resources, and improve recreational access for the estimated 2 million people who visit this area annually. Next slide, please. The Point Reyes National Seashore, known as Tamaulipas, the ancestral lands of the Federated Indians of Great and Rancheria, includes over 71,000 acres of coastal prairies, shrublands, wetlands, and estuaries, and is one of the largest contiguous coastal wildlife areas remaining in California. In the mid-19th century, following the gold rush population explosion in San Francisco, dairy and beef cattle operations were established here. In the 1930s, the federal government, recognizing this area for its biodiversity and habitat value, attempted to purchase the land and establish a natural preserve, but it wasn't until the Kennedy administration that the Point Reyes National Seashore was founded. By then, almost all of this land was privately owned. So voluntary land purchases continued over the next decade with lease options included for existing ranchers. In 1978, tule elk, native to the area and since extirpated, were reintroduced by the State Department of Fish and Wildlife at Tomales Point and soon outgrew its range. In 1980, the National Park Service developed a general plan to manage the Point Reyes National Seashore. Dairy and cattle operations continued under lease options. Over the last decade, a series of events took place to determine how this area would be managed as a natural preserve, involving lease updates, a general plan update, and challenges to that update, culminating to the current year when the National Park Service issued a record of decision for a general plan amendment to maintain habitat for native plant and animal communities. As part of this process, the Nature Conservancy was invited by all parties to broker a voluntary settlement to pay out most of the dairy and cattle ranch operations. The agreement allows ranching to continue, that prioritizes ecological protection, wildlife conservation, and continued recreational access. Next slide, please. This slide highlights current conditions within the project area. The map on the left shows existing cattle fencing and watering infrastructure overlain with a thicker slanted diagonal lines showing current distribution of tule elk. Tule elk herds are currently isolated, concentrated, and cut off from water sources that often create stressful conditions, particularly during drought and dry seasons. The removal of most of the fencing, coupled with targeted conservation grazing, would allow the elk to roam freely throughout the preserve. The middle image shows a section of the fencing that separates the tule elk from a cattle grazing field where we see heavy growth of coastal scrub on the right side where the elk exists, with the other side of the fence dominated by low-lying invasive weeds. And moving further out, the Google Earth image on the right gives a general landscape scale comparison of vegetative coverage between existing cattle operations at the bottom half of the image and areas populated by tule elk at the top half. Using targeted grazing as an ecological tool, the project would plan for a mosaic of native coastal scrub and grassland working with remaining cattle operations. Next slide, please. So to develop coastal habitat restoration in a timely manner, following adjustments in grazing activity, this project would begin long-term restoration of the Point Reyes National Seashore by developing a managed grazing plan that redirects the landscape to a diverse matrix of coastal prairie grasslands and shrublands as directed by the Point Reyes National Seashore General Management Plan. Completing the design and permitting to install new water infrastructure that supports conservation grazing. This includes repairs to fencing where needed, modifying water infrastructure, and installing virtual fencing systems that would contain and easily adjust cattle operations while allowing wildlife to roam freely, and developing a plan to accelerate grassland restoration in areas most heavily degraded, such as cattle concentration and silage cultivation sites. And finally, developing the research and monitoring needed to measure the ecological impacts of these practices to achieve long-term conservation goals. Next slide, please. To assure transparency throughout this process, at least 2 public meetings will be held to collect input on resource concerns, opportunities, and priorities from the community that will be incorporated into a draft grazing and restoration plan. Once drafted, the plan will be released for public review and comment, and input will be considered in finalizing the plan, all in close coordination with the National Park Service for consistency with managing the area as a federal national park. Reflecting a shared commitment to honor the ecological and cultural significance of the Point Reyes National Seashore, this project will launch the restoration and recovery of one of California's last intact coastal ecosystems. Staff recommends the Wildlife Conservation Board approve the project as proposed. Joining us in person for comments are Dr. Rod Kelsey, Land Program Director for the Nature Conservancy, and Ann Altman, Park Superintendent from the National Park Service. Also joining us in person are Buffy McQuillan, Tribal Heritage Preservation Officer with the Federated Indians of Great Rancheria, Donna Four, Executive Director for the Point Reyes National Seashore Association, June Bando, Executive Director for the California Native Plant Society, and Jerry Merrill, serving on the Board of Directors for the West Marin Environmental Action Committee, and joining us remotely are Ashley Eagle Gibbs, Executive Director with the West Marine Environmental Action Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt, and thank you, WCB Board, for considering this application today. We sincerely appreciate that. Kurt covered it well, and I won't belabor some of that, but as we all know, this represents one of the most biodiverse and beloved landscapes in California. It's in fact the only national seashore on the West Coast. And as we all know, and many of you may have been there, that it harbors and contains critical freshwater resources, important sensitive tribal cultural sites, and hundreds of wildlife species that depend on this coastal ecosystem, including the Tule elk herd. It's the largest left in the state that the Department of Fish and Wildlife co-manages to this day. With the recent voluntary and final legal settlement that occurred in January, this opens the door for us to work with the park, the tribe, and many of the partners in the community to begin implementing a land stewardship program that will protect and restore the natural and cultural resources out there. And the funding request before you really is the beginning of that process for us to begin to chart a new future and build a management program that's focused on enhancing biodiversity values out there, improving water quality, increasing the resilience in a changing climate, and improving the visitor experience on the national park. Now, TNC is here as the project sponsor, even though this is a national park, because of our responsibility under the cooperative agreement that we have with the park that was part of the settlement. And our job is to help the park, the Federated Indians of Great Rancheria, the Point Reyes National Seashore Association, and many partners begin to develop and ultimately execute the new land stewardship management program out there. As Kurt presented, the project you're considering today will fund the planning component of this. And specifically, this is going to allow us to create a final infrastructure modernization plan that's going to allow us to modernize the fencing and water infrastructure that will allow us to holistically and with high precision manage the grazing on that landscape. It's also going to allow us to develop the targeted grazing plan that Kurt mentioned, one that is focused specifically on restoring the natural resources in this landscape and increasing the wildfire and climate resilience of the seashore on the 17,000 acres that are the subject of this planning grant. In addition, this is going to allow us to develop a plan with the partners around restoring those parts of the landscape that have been most heavily impacted by decades of cultivation of triticale wheat for the dairies and manure spreading as a function of dairy operations. And then finally, it's going to allow us to develop a research and monitoring plan that is really going to be the foundation for adaptive management of this landscape going forward with and for the park in the service of its general management plan. A couple of points I just want to close and emphasize is we are absolutely committed to an open public process in this. This is something that we know the community is anxious for at this stage of the change on the national seashore in the development of these plans. And as you can see from the supporting partners that are here today, we've already begun the process of engaging them and beginning the conversation. And we look forward to rolling up our sleeves over the coming years to work with them on building and executing this program. And finally, I just will say that we're excited to bring what TNC has learned over the last several decades, managing and restoring working ranches on over 400,000 acres across California. And we intend to bring all of the tools and science and know-how we've developed on those to help us and the partners get this right. Thank you. I should, let me just say one thing also, while Buffy McQuillan's here from the tribe and Ann Altman are here from the park, they're not going to start with remarks, but they're happy to answer questions directly for the board.
Great. Thank you, Rod. I hear planning and public process, both of which I think are really needed next steps across the community. And I'm personally excited about those steps. Any questions from board members? And while you think about that, if you're in the room and you'd like to, the room has figured it out. There's already a queue in the side here. And anyone that's online, go ahead and raise your hand and we'll come to virtual last. Just seeing if there are questions from board members. Karen?
I do, just so I'm understanding the grazing. So most of the existing ranchers are in the process of moving out, what, by early next year, right? And so the grazing plan is going to bring cattle back, or are we for like forever, or, you know, I know you haven't done the plan yet, but they're bringing cows back, after they just got moved off. Is that what's happening?
We are going to use grazing as a natural resource and conservation tool at greatly reduced numbers. The settlement set a cap on the number of animal units on the property. That's about a quarter of what has been out there. And that's actually just the cap. So where we land in terms of the number of cows managing this will be determined as we both design the plan and then execute and adaptively manage over time.
And so you would do a RFP or something for grazers, or you work with particular grazers, or are you bringing any of the other ranchers back, or?
Yeah, great question. So one thing that went unsaid is that as we develop this plan quickly and as we finalize that plan, we will issue a public request for proposals to the grazing community. And we will preferentially want to work with local grazers in this community. And it will be open to anybody who wants to engage on and implement this plan with us.
And Karen, I know you know this and others, but that actually does track what our Department of Fish and Wildlife does. And we are not involved in this aspect for the seashore. We own and manage about 1 million acres in the state, 750 projects, and we use grazing across that portfolio for specific like place-based restoration, as well as it's a competitive but preference for local economy support. So that model is known to us on our end of the state. Okay, not seeing questions. Let's go ahead and go to the line in the room. And again, if you're comfortable introducing yourself, any affiliation, you'll see a 2-minute timer pop up. We don't overly stringently police that, but we appreciate, kind of an awareness of the 2 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Dr. June Bondo, the Executive Director of the California Native Plant Society. I represent more than 13,000 CNPS members across California and 35 chapters, including our local Marin chapter. Although I'm here speaking on behalf of CNPS, I want to acknowledge and thank members of our local chapter who are joining this meeting virtually. I'm here today to express support for the Nature Conservancy's proposal transforming the Point Reyes National Seashore. As you've heard, the National Seashore is one of the most important coastal areas for biodiversity in California. It hosts more than 600 species of native plants, about 10% of our floral diversity, including more than 50 species that are rare, threatened, or endangered, like the beach leia and Tidestrom's lupin. The project area has been degraded by agricultural operations and the introduction of invasive species. Conservation and restoration of these habitats will require active stewardship, guided by plans for managed grazing, restoration, and science and monitoring, as TNC has proposed. This is a landscape that has always known disturbance, and managing for the mosaic of habitats required to support biodiversity will require managing and other forms of active disturbance going forward. The California Native Plant Society doesn't currently have a formal role in this project. However, we have worked with the Nature Conservancy in other areas, like Las Paletas Ranch in San Luis Obispo County, where we've seen TNC's good work, including the use of conservation-oriented grazing to sustain habitats for rare species. We trust TNC to undertake this work in partnership We appreciate that TNC has already reached out to CMPS and other partners to invite our participation. We're excited about the opportunity for the proposed project to generate positive outcomes for both conservation and local communities, and we encourage you to support this proposal. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Chance Catrano, and I'm the Director of Programs at the Marin-based Resource Renewal Institute, and I'm here to speak in support of this historic restoration opportunity. First, I want to acknowledge the visionary legacy of Huey Johnson, former Secretary of Natural Resources under Governor Jerry Brown and founder of RRI. As founder and executive director of the Trust for Public Land earlier in his career, Huey played a pivotal role in acquiring thousands of acres of the Point Reyes Peninsula that ultimately finalized the Point Reyes National Seashore that we know today. Building on that legacy, and after increasingly severe drought conditions that contributed to mass die-offs of Tule elk, Huey and our team established the campaign to restore Point Reyes National Seashore 10 years ago, recognizing the critical need to protect this extraordinary ecosystem for future generations. That effort has now grown into a coalition of over 100 organizations representing over 10 million wildlife and national park advocates across the country, united in this restoration mission. Point Reyes, as folks have mentioned, is one of the most biodiverse places in North America. And this remarkable landscape supports 45% of North America's bird species, over 10% of California's plant species, and over 2.3 million annual visitors. Over 1,500 species of plants and animals call the seashore home, and 100 species are currently listed as rare, threatened, or endangered. During the development of CNRA's Pathways to 30 by 30 process, we contributed detailed comments highlighting the immense value of restoring Point Reyes, specifically converting GAP 2 coastal grassland and wetland ecosystems leased for commercial dairy and beef operations to GAP 1 status landscapes that are durably conserved in perpetuity. These proposed restoration efforts are furthering various objectives outlined by partner agencies, including the National Park Service, the California Coastal Commission, the San Francisco Regional Water Quality Control Board, and even CDFW's Elk Management Plan. I want to thank our partners at the Nature Conservancy for their coordination of this project and the Wildlife Conservation Board for considering this contribution for this historic opportunity. Together, our community can begin restoration efforts across thousands of acres of, as Rod said, the only national seashore on the west coast of the United States. This moment represents the culmination of decades of advocacy and the beginning of a new chapter of Point Reyes conservation story, and we look forward to you all joining us. Thank you so much.
Hello, I'm Jerry Merrill. I'm the Water Resources Director for the Natural Heritage Institute, and I want to start by thanking Senator Blakespear. I was the author of the Habitat Conservation Fund in 1990 in Prop 117, and we really appreciate your efforts to keep it going. It's terrific. I also had the privilege of working with Senator Peter Baer in establishing the Point Reyes National Seashore when President Nixon wanted to get rid of it, and we were very successful in that effort. For 15 years, I've been a volunteer at the seashore in the Ecological Restoration Program. I've probably pulled 20, 30,000 broom plants, among others, and that program obviously is the precursor to what the Nature Conservancy proposes today. I'm not representing the Marine Resource Conservation District officially, but I am an elected member of that board, and we have worked out in the seashore with the Ecological Restoration Program, and we hope to do more in the future now that this program is going to be well funded. The Nature Conservancy has got it right in their proposal. We absolutely have to control the invasive plants in the seashore if we want to preserve or really restore the ecological restoration out there. Without that, the seashore will be overrun by a lot of really bad plant actors. Finally, I want to suggest in the future parts of this program, which I understand are going to go on substantially, that you consider funding the USDA Animal Plant Health Inspection Service, something you may not have spent a lot of time with, but their goal is to come up with insects mostly and other organisms that will control very bad invasive plants. They've done this with Cape ivy. I've worked with them a lot on that. And at the seashore, we have things like ice plant and European beach grass that can never be controlled without biological control. So I hope in the future parts of this program, the board will consider helping to fund the USDA. Thank you very much.
afternoon. My name is Donna Four, and I'm the Executive Director at Point Reyes National Seashore Association, or PRINZA. And we are the official nonprofit partner to the Park Service at Point Reyes. We were founded in 1962, just 64, just 2 years after the park was founded. And we focus on conservation, education, and community building. So we're really a community partner. I've lived in the park for 15 years. What most excites us about this project, and why I'm glad that you're considering it, is not just the everything that was just spoken about, but also how we can build community through this work. One of our focus areas is working with youth historically not welcomed on public land. We do a lot of work to bring kids from around the Bay Area and around the local area into the park, and we see the restoration opportunity, particularly of the grasslands, which is such a unique and endangered and not much left in California ecosystem, to tell that story, to be part of that story, to be part of the restoration. So we're very excited about that. We also run a volunteer program that does stewardship restoration. So we see ourselves as that connector, and we also partner so well. And we love partnering with our Park Service friends and our newer partner, the Federated Indians of Great and Rancheria. We're doing some really wonderful work around trails with both of those partners, and we're excited about working with the Nature Conservancy, who we've only done a little bit of work with, but we have found them to be a really great partner. And we know it's this, living in the community, it's a sensitive subject. It's been hard on the community, and this opportunity to have a story of restoration and memory in the land brought back and told and connected is something that is very important and a once in a lifetime thing that we love to, we want to be a part of, and we're excited about being a part of. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's do a quick check. How many folks are in the virtual queue? Great. Let's go ahead and bring them in, and you'll see the 2-minute clock on the screen. And first speaker, please.
Ashley Eagle Gibbs. You should be able to unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Good morning, Chair Bonham, Vice Chair Nagami, and honorable board members. My name is Ashley Eagle Gibbs, and I'm the Executive Director of the Environmental Action Committee of West Marin. We're based in Point Reyes Station, right in the community, and we were established in 1971 with our mission to protect and sustain the unique lands, waters, and biodiversity of West Marin. We are a community-based organization, and I'm here representing approximately 1,200 members, the majority of whom are based in West Marin. One of our core programs includes protecting public lands and vital habitats, including advocacy and community science in the Point Reyes National Seashore. We advocate for strong environmental regulations, public access, 30 by 30, and the restoration of essential ecosystems across coastal Marin, including monitoring water quality in the seashore in partnership with the National Park Service to identify pollutants and develop solutions. We strongly support the Nature Conservancy's grant application to your board. We are excited to see this restoration moving forward for the strong biodiversity and 30 by 30 benefits for California. And we look forward to partnering with TNC, with our partners at NPS and other local partners to fully participate in the planning and implementation of this restoration. We very much appreciate that TNC has already begun the community engagement process of reaching out to us and others to initiate this collaborative partnership. And we strongly support science-based analysis of the plan restoration, implementation, and monitoring. Granting this application will allow TNC and its partners to conduct this important planning process, which the public will be included in. And this restoration will also enhance the use and enjoyment for the 2 million plus park visitors who access this free and accessible national park unit located in close proximity to the Bay Area. So we encourage your board to approve this application. And without these funds, implementation of this critical restoration project just wouldn't be possible. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Albert Strauss, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we got you.
Yeah. Hi, my name's Albert Strauss. I'm founder of Strauss Family Creamery and organic dairy farm in Marshall, California. We were the first certified organic dairy and creamery west of Mississippi River, and the first 100% organic creamery in the United States. We have built an organic farming and food community that is a model for the world. We have almost 90% of the dairies certified organic. This action to take out 6 of the organic dairies in Point Reyes National Seashore is devastating our farming and food community. We're losing over 200 members of our community that are being evicted by the National Park Service and the Nature Conservancy, and we are in crisis. Subverting the public process, which gave 20-year leases, and all the agreements that we've done over many decades is really destructive. And for the state to fund this destruction of our farms and our food and our communities is really reprehensible. So turning the TNC's efforts to turn this land into conservation grazing, which is neither conservation nor grazing, is really problematic. And there's no people involved in this equation. Farmers are being evicted. Their grazing is going to be done by as a service versus providing food. And it's not, and there's legal challenges to this process as well right now, that the state is inserting itself into a legal process, a public process that has not been resolved. And I feel that it's very much against the future of organic foods and organic farming and our rural communities. So I urge you not to do this and change this narrative, please, and help us.
Thank you, Mr. Schaus. I think we'll have our third speaker next.
Western Watershed, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Thank you. My name is Eric Molvar. I'm the Executive Director of Western Watersheds Project, a nonprofit conservation group working to protect and restore wildlife and watersheds throughout the American West. I myself have been involved in achieving Point Reyes restoration efforts for about the last 8 years, and Western Watersheds Project is one of the 3 key environmental groups that brought forward the challenge that set the stage for this current restoration effort. I want to applaud the Nature Conservancy's buyout of ranches from willing sellers, that subset of the ranching community that decided it was in its interest to sell for those conservation purposes. When this conservation grazing or targeted grazing effort moves forward, it's going to be very challenging because there's not a great deal of science that indicates that you can actually improve conditions through cattle grazing. I appreciate the fact that the Nature Conservancy is focusing on restoring native coastal grasslands and addressing invasive weeds. It is true that the cattle pastures on Point Reyes are virtually 100% invasive weeds, European annual species. Those will need to be rewilded back to natural California coastal grasslands. WWP is interested in and looking forward to participating in the development of this planning process. We urge all to keep this process as open and accessible to the public as possible. It should go through a full NEPA review on the federal level as required by law, and we will be participating in that review. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that takes us to our last speaker.
Dairy Girl Diaries, you should be able to mute yourself.
Hi there, my name is Stephanie. I'm also known as Dairy Girl Diaries. I've been working along with farmers and the community covering this event, this tragic loss of our food system and quality small family farms, multi-generational. The entire existence of the pastoral zone exists simply because farmers entered an agreement with government. And although a lot of these organizations will lead you to believe that these are willing farmers leaving their homelands after generations. It was a tearful event where farmers were placed in a legal hardship pattern between a rock and a hard place and offered little to no quality lease or partnership with the National Park Service. I want to extend my sincerest opposition to this for the simple fact that not only are we causing destruction of our food system through this effort, but also there is lots of science that cattle are the solution environmentally. I urge people to do better research and look at both sides of the coin. These organizations have falsely been trudging down this path to destroy our agriculture and our food system in a community where we not only need food, but also 150 families are being displaced, and they're rushing to create homeless shelters now for these people because we have nowhere for them to go. So I just want to urge everyone to continue to do better research and look at both sides, not just where the money is coming from. The Nature Conservancy is backed by billions of dollars. These farmers have little to nothing. And so that's why we have an overwhelming response on one side of the coin versus the other. On top of that, through my efforts, I have an overwhelming response from the community and the people that live here that we want our agriculture. So please do not support this.
Great, thank you. So that, I believe, closes public comment. Let me just check and make sure we don't have any other virtual hands raised. And so,
There are no raised hands.
great, we'll come back up to the dais and let me just start with a couple of reflections, listening to the public comment in the room and also virtually. Look, as director of the Department of Fish and Wildlife, I'm regularly torn between deeply held perspectives on any given issue that our public wants to express. Our department finds ourselves often in the middle of difficult decisions that affect people and environment. And it's with great humility, I appreciate everyone felt comfortable coming to the board today to express those views from their public perspective. For what it's worth, probably oversharing, I actually proposed to my wife at the seashore. She said yes. And I also agree with Mr. Strauss, and I'm a purchaser of his family's product, that West Marin set an example and still does for the world in the context of regenerative and family and organic farming. But it is also very true, the state of California and the Wildlife Conservation Board are not parties to any of the activity that's occurred to date. We are not involved in the litigation that may have been brought recently. My understanding is that's litigation and it will need to play out, brought against the federal government primarily. It is also the case that the Wildlife Conservation Board today has a proposal in front of it, whether it's approved or rejected, that has no effect on these important other things that are happening. Parties may avail themselves of the judicial system. It's obvious there's a deep need for a discussion at the local level as communities work through these issues. For me, when I look at the proposal that's narrow before this particular board, who already has a pretty defined jurisdiction, the grant in front of the board is for planning, and it sure sounds like planning is needed. And the grant before the board also expressly includes public input and process. And as an observer, it sure sounds like a lot of public input is needed to make any good plan for what may happen next. So we'll give it a moment for board members if you've got questions for staff or other concerns. Discussion amongst ourselves.
I have a quick question. I think it was Mr. Strauss that said we were injecting ourselves into ongoing litigation, but it sounds like it's distinct and separate. And I was hoping somebody could explain
Yes.
that so that I really get a sense that it is distinct and
Yeah.
separate.
To start that, but I'm not anyone's legal counsel. My understanding of the most recent litigation that may have been filed, it appears to me to be between individuals and the federal government about whether the process to get to this moment was appropriate or not, whether it needed additional federal environmental review, those kinds of things. Separate, but happening in the same space, as I understand it, has been a long-running litigious space around what should or shouldn't happen at the seashore. Again, litigation, the state of California, certainly the Wildlife Conservation Board have never been involved in. I don't know if either the park or the Nature Conservancy, which, as I understand it, the Conservancy is evicting no one. They don't have that authority. As I understand it, they've been asked to serve in a mediation role as part of a settlement agreement created by other parties.
Yeah, thank you, Director Bonham. I'll just affirm that there is a single ongoing lawsuit that regards the legality of how the process and the final decision, the record of decision, and that resulted in the general plan amendment that calls for targeted grazing and was all part of the settlement. Just to clarify a couple things, as part of the settlement, not all agriculture is being removed from the park. Generally, there are ranches remaining on the Golden Gate National Recreation Area that were also part of the settlement that are negotiating renewed leases with the park. So this is not about removing agriculture from the park and certainly not from Marin. There was reference to the families out there. There is no debating that this is an incredibly hard transition and one that is extremely hard. We were with them around the table talking about these and negotiating the final settlement, to which they voluntarily agreed. And so these were voluntary agreements. And we also all agreed as parties to the settlement to develop and execute a transition support for the families and workers that are on the seashore and have been for in many cases generations. And that transition support plan is being implemented now. And all but one of the households is currently participating and has already received transition support as we speak.
Amen.
This discussion is super helpful. Is the status and the situation at the seashore stable enough for us to be secure that like planning would be for the situation that is going to be in place reasonably certainly for the near future? If the situation is less stable, as stewards of state money, we have to be careful about investing in a planning process where the situation may change. So I guess I just have a general question about that. I don't know if the litigation affects that. You also have a federal administration that's making some decisions that, this guy wants to just reverse stuff that he doesn't like is happening out there. Is that a possibility? I think there's a lot of unknowns out there that I don't know if we have answers to that.
Okay, so let's just pause for a moment. And as we began the board meeting, we walked through run of show. Run of show follows this sequence for each agenda item: staff presentation, project proposal proponent comment, call for queuing for public comment, questions by board to staff. We hear public comment, we close public comment, and we come back up for deliberation discussion. So for the folks that are engaged, and I think we had maybe 10 public commenters, we won't be opening public comment back up. And what's going on here in the room, if you're not, is the the discussion amongst board members, kind of, that's how this works in public, deliberating, thinking out loud. Damon, I don't personally feel qualified to make any prediction on what party's legal claims chance of success or not. I'm sure there's a possibility, those that may challenge with the underlying, I think, decision by the federal government, they could win. And then you'd have to ask yourself, is this like a commitment of 2 million by our board that's irrevocable? You've lost it. Maybe, but it also struck me listening that part of what's going on is like, how do you modernize some infrastructure that's out there? Is that prudent planning kind of anyway to at least get started? And certainly I would insist, it sure seems like you got to have a lot of public process, because people need a place that may not have existed previously where they're going to have to talk a lot of this out. So I don't know if we're qualified as a board to say, hey, in 6 months, will someone have won in one of their legal challenges? I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Chuck. I just wanted to raise a question. I was pretty sure we wouldn't have answers. I'm a proponent of smart planning for ecosystem purposes, for conservation purposes, to have a sensible, ordered plan for restoring something that clearly needs attention. So, yeah, see if anyone else has thoughts.
Well, just to follow up on the litigation, the folks who brought suit are not, if I understand it, the ranchers who have taken the buyouts. Is that correct?
That is true. Their ranch will remain in Seashore. It's not part of the settlement.
It's there, yeah. So in terms of us planning, I mean, the ranchers are already moving out, correct?
Yeah.
So it seems like planning is appropriate.
Yeah.
Regardless of what happens with the other decisions.
And if the board would bear with me for a minute, like, I don't think this board raised its hand and said, we want to be in the middle of something that predates and has many other people, engaged. So I'm very mindful that this board needs to maintain its relations with those who are engaging with us today in a kind of a, if you will, a neutral fashion. Honestly, I suspect since TNC has spoken, Mr. Strauss probably has raised his hand virtually. And let me just see if the board's comfortable with like a chair discretion. I'd like to bring Mr. Strauss back if he has a comment. I'm sure he's listening. I would say 2 minutes or less. And I'm just trying to manage an approach that gives folks a sense you're not being overlooked, you're not being shut down. I understand Mr. Strauss does have a commercial interest, and that to me warrants, a chance for an extra comment. So Mr. Strauss, if you could come back online. And again, if you'd be mindful of the 2 minutes, and let's try to avoid, so-and-so said, so I'm saying, the board's trying to listen to everyone and think through our very narrow role at this current moment, acknowledging there's a lot going on that's unrelated to us.
Mr. Strauss, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So just to kind of put this in perspective. So Marin County, 68% of the land is public land. 20% of the land in Point Reyes, the pastoral zone in Point Reyes National Seashore is 20% of the agricultural land in Marin County. We're losing that. The Nature Conservancy is not the group to plan for agricultural or conservation practices on agricultural land. We have the Marin Conservation Resource Conservation District is very much more appropriate to put these funds into. We have so the efforts by this the federal national administration is going to be crucial to keeping this land in agriculture. And I'm still hopeful that's going to happen. So putting your foot into this scenario has to be done very intentionally and very proactively. We have shown where the Marin County developed this national program for Marin, the carbon farm planning and adding compost land using animals to intensive rotational graze is pulling carbon from the atmosphere and putting it back in the soil, which is recognized internationally as one of the only ways to reverse climate change, or rather reduce it. We have a carbon neutral organic dairy farm model that was recognized by the United Nations as a model for the world, where we're sequestering, we're going to be carbon neutral, all our dairies are going to be carbon neutral by 2030. So this effort is flying in the face of everything we're doing in Marin County to lead the world. I implore you to work with us rather than, we need to work together as a community and society rather than splitting us apart and polarizing. I think this is really essential that we work together. We look at this, don't just throw money at this solution of this problem. Let's do it intentionally and collaboratively.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Strauss. And I can tell in the emotion in your voice how much you care about this special place. Well, hold on.
No,
Hold
no,
on.
go ahead, please.
Yeah. And would also say thank you for, changing the kind of food service, food production world with your leadership there in West Marin. There is no question in my mind listening how much the future for the seashore and what may happen has to involve public engagement, perhaps in a broader way. So we wanted to open up an invitation for you to make an additional comment. Coming back to the board, we are going to kind of close public comment. I don't think unless we have a really specific question for someone, which I would entertain. Let's come back up for kind of discussion. Any other thoughts?
Can I add one more thing? Sorry to interrupt you.
Mr. Strauss, humbly, I would just ask.
Okay, it's okay. It's okay.
We've extended the opportunity twice, which is itself unusual. I would think we'll go ahead and close public comment. Thoughts or other questions? And if a board member would like to hear more from anyone involved, please don't hesitate to say that's your next kind of question.
I have a question. And I don't know who is the right person to answer this, but if the plaintiffs were to prevail in the federal litigation, would it moot out the planning work, or would that planning work still have value? And I think that's really kind of a follow-up to
Yes.
what the vice chair was asking.
I don't know. My guess is probably a little bit of both. Hold on, because it could be a little bit of both. I don't know. Look, I'm mindful Board Member Thomas, we could ask for feedback on that, but I'll just acknowledge I may then need to offer like a Mr. Strauss as a representative kind of in the discussion, more time for comment. So I just kind of trying to think about how to navigate this in a way that's respectful of the different perspectives in the room.
And I'm just mindful of
Yep.
the same thing that
Yeah.
the vice chair is, that are we spending money that isn't going to be of value?
Yep.
And so that's kind of where I'm at.
Let me check with Jen. How did we get this money anyway? Is it one of those examples of an appropriation to this purpose?
Yeah, this was put into our budget last year, specifically targeted toward Point Reyes restoration work.
Say that again, Jen, I'm sorry.
This was what I was referring to earlier as what we sometimes call a legislative ad or a member request for $10 million for Point Reyes National Seashore restoration work. So this would be the first tranche of that funding towards the planning of the restoration. But it's it's a fund that we don't have discretion over where it gets spent. It's going to be spent here.
Just, well, I see a couple cues. We'll go for Senator Pavley. Are you reaching over? And then Karen has a question.
I don't have any questions and just, I've tried to read through this thoroughly and but knowing our relatively minor role in this ongoing discussion of a planning grant, if this moves forward, because we see that there is a settlement agreement between 12 commercial dairy and beef cattle operations voluntarily ending their license. That's what I'm operating under, that assumption. And if that changes over time through litigation or other issues, we can adjust to that at the time. But I think it's appropriate to move forward with that planning grant on this amazing piece of property. And one thing I looked at, just from my perspective of chairing the Natural Resources and Water Committee, is the concern about water quality and supply. The status quo is not okay either. There are some real serious challenges in some real practical senses. And one is groundwater basins being drained, maybe not managed correctly, pressure on agricultural operations, and everything else that's going on environmentally in the climate changing world. So I'm supporting the moving forward with the planning thing, and I'm not suggesting that we're getting engaged in litigation at all. Just this is a step forward if that's the direction this ends up going in the long term. So with that, I think I will be supporting moving forward today on that planning grant.
Thank you, Senator. Let's hold for a moment and not move into, is there a motion space? Because we might have a few more questions I can sense here at the dais. Karen,
Yeah, I actually had a completely different topic question, which, because I feel like we have discussed this part a fair bit, but I'm just curious because I know we have a representative of Great Rancheria here, and the staff report mentioned that the tribe was going to be involved in the restoration, but I'd kind of like to hear a little bit more about how the tribe's going to be participating on this restoration planning.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm happy to be here representing the Federated Indians of Great Rancheria. You know, our past with the seashore has been very complex. In 2021, we reached a very historic agreement with the seashore, which was co-stewardship. And so much of the work around co-stewardship is as complex as what you're hearing today. Restoring a seashore that has been changed quite dramatically from its ancestral beginnings, which this is who Great Rancheria is. It's the ancestral tribe. While we appreciate certainly the representatives of commercial interests and even the environmental community, the tribe certainly has a different approach and a different strategy, and has been working very directly and consistently with mostly the seashore, because like you, we have not been involved in any litigation, nor would we want to. That's a very complex matter, but we are trying our best to support what TNC is doing and what other folks around the county see as the best practices and the best solution forward. What that looks like for Great Rancheria is we use a lot of ancestral cultural knowledge. We look at plants and animals in a different way. And we do that through the guidance of the tribal council and from tribal elders and our own environmental and cultural consultants. That work is yet to really begin. And so we do encourage you to do this next step, which is a planning process. Unfortunately, because it was litigation, the interests have really not come to the table to be heard in terms of what are the right next steps, who are the folks who have best science from Marin County, from the tribe. And so that's why we're really kind of rolling this back to a planning process so that we really can get down to what is in the best interest of the seashore, ecologically, culturally, environmentally. So I appreciate the question. But we're not going to dive into what is the actual solution. We certainly will come to the table and have been, and just want to assure you that that's the case.
Other questions, concerns? Hey, just for kind of separate but related, you know, in my other role as director of the department, my door is always open to any of the concerned public that just wants to talk about their view of the future for the region. We at the department are a property owner, pretty proximate to the seashore. We do work with the communities and the park around the Thule elk issues. And of course, we have our own government to government relationship with the tribe. So for Mr. Strauss and others that may wish to reach out to me in that capacity, I will always be available as well. If we're past discussion deliberation for board members, we either get a motion, or if we get no motion, then we have to kind of look at each other and think about how we handle that procedurally.
I'll make a motion to move forward to supply the grant funds towards a planning grant fund from the Wildlife Conservation Board for the transformation of the Point Reyes National Seashore.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Chair Bonham,
Aye.
Vice Chair Nagami,
Aye.
Member Gear,
Aye.
Member Pavley,
Aye.
Member Peralt,
Aye.
Member Thomas,
Aye.
motion passes.
So that takes us to agenda item 21.
All right, Jen Stanfield, please come up and share with us about Alder 89 Forest and Lahontan Cutthroat Trout Habitat Restoration.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. So we are going to kind of zoom east across the state to the Truckee Tahoe area. And for this item, we are going to be considering the allocation of a grant to the Truckee River Watershed Council for a project on Forest Service land in Nevada County. Next slide, please. So this project consists of two kind of sub-projects. There's the Alder 89 implementation, which is focused on wildfire resilience, as well as LCT restoration planning, which consists of habitat enhancement planning to benefit Lahontan cutthroat trout. These projects were identified by a regional collaborative known as the Middle Truckee River Watershed Forest Partnership as priorities in their recent 10-year vegetation management plan. Additionally, the activities supported by this grant build upon significant WCB investment, both in acquisitions and restoration projects in the Truckee area. Next slide, please. The Alder 89 implementation will utilize a variety of restoration forestry techniques to combat the overstocked homogeneous conditions that have become the predominant stand structure through more than 100 years of fire exclusion. One such technique will include variable density thinning, which will result in a variety of stand structures across the restored site and is meant to increase forest health and biodiversity, as well as mimic a natural mosaic pattern that would exist were historic disturbance regimes to still be in place. Thinning will be paired with surface and ladder fuel treatments to create an area of reduced fuels to modulate fire intensity, which will both preserve habitat and offer a strategic feature that can aid in fire suppression. Next slide, please. The treatments will reduce the continuity of surface and ladder fuels, helping to increase tree vigor, reduce the likelihood of high-severity fire, and create a more resilient ecosystem with improved habitat for a variety of species, including northern goshawk, California spotted owl, and willow flycatcher. Next slide, please. And then next up, I'll talk a little bit more about the LCT planning elements of the project. Once widespread through the Sierra Nevada mountains, Lahontan cutthroat trout is now confined to less than 5% of its historic range, with Independence Lake hosting one of only 2 self-sustaining lake populations in existence. The project will support NEPA planning to enable habitat enhancement implementation in essential spawning grounds for this federally listed threatened species. Next slide, please. Surveys and restoration designs will address overly dense forest conditions that are contributing to habitat degradation, the invasion of forest pests and pathogens, and an increased fire hazard. Planning and environmental compliance will enable implementation to preserve and increase habitat function, including a likely increase in surface and groundwater flows to the Lahontan cutthroat trout spawning grounds. Access to the remote site has long been an impediment to tackling restoration at the inlet to Independence Lake, and this project will support designs necessary to improve this access to allow equipment and crews to perform the restoration that is currently infeasible. This proposal leverages regional partnerships to allow near-term implementation while supporting and concurrently creating project pathways for future restoration. The grant will provide substantial biodiversity and community benefits while filling in restoration gaps for regional resilience. Staff recommends the project as proposed, and here in person to answer questions are Evan Swain with the Truckee River Watershed Council, as well as Rachel Hutchison and Jonathan Cook Fisher with the U.S. Forest Service. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Let's just pause real quick. We'll have questions for staff, and anyone in the public that wants to queue up, please do so. Raise your hand virtually. This is as part of the state that happens to be home with some of my favorite fishing. But that's also really besides.
And we do have, I think Evan was going to offer some comments on behalf of the project proponent.
Please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having us here. Very much appreciated. Just a big thank you, of course, for consideration of the funding, and thanks to the WCB staff for moving everything forward as well and working with us so closely. We had a great field visit a couple of weeks ago, I guess, and really got to tour some of these areas. But both Rebecca Friss and Jen Stanfield were present through that tour. If funded by WCB, the Alder 89 and LCT Fuels projects really continues the momentum of the Middle Truckee River Watershed Forest Partnership in achieving our goal of implementing forest health and ecological restoration activities across 60,000 acres in the next decade. The combination of funding provided for project implementation, which is the Alder 89 project, and for planning, which is the LCT Fuels project, is critical to being able to complete on-the-ground work, as well as being able to move projects forward to the implementation stage. The Wildlife Conservation Board has been a strong supporter of projects identified by the partnership, and implementation of large landscape scale projects will not be possible without financial backing from WCB and other funding partners. We are deeply grateful for this support and look forward to continuing to work together to address forest health, community, and ecological needs, and to increase resiliency and protect critical resources within our watershed. Thanks, and I believe we are happy to answer any questions as well.
Any board member questions? Any public that's in the room wish to make a comment? Seeing none, do we have any hands raised virtually for public comment on this item?
Don raised hand.
Back up to the podium. Any other discussion or motion?
And I'll move staff approval.
I'll second.
I'll move the item. It's exciting to see this population increase, and I
Yep.
think it's just a really great project, so I'll move the item.
And we'll second over here, Karen and I. Aye.
Gami,
Aye.
Member Gear,
Aye.
Member Pavley,
Aye.
Member Peralt. Aye. Member Thomas.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Great. I'm gonna pass the gavel to Vice Chair, who's better at this than I am. I have a prior commitment at 1 o'clock that I've got to run to. And you still have a quorum, so thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we'll invite up Kim Cruz to present on the Sacramento River Wildlife Area Mile 164-L. Falcons. That's a long enough title for you. Thanks, Kim.
This project is to consider the acquisition of 128 acres to expand CDFW's Sacramento River Wildlife Area, which will strengthen connectivity with the 13 units of the wildlife area and the Sacramento River National Wildlife Refuge Corridor that spans from Colusa up to Red Bluff. This acquisition will benefit threatened wildlife species and serve the disadvantaged community it's located within by offering year-round wildlife-oriented access and recreation. Next slide, please. About 2/3 of the property is currently comprised of walnut and pecan orchards, with the remaining 1/3 consisting of riparian and riverine habitats. After acquisition, CDFW would eventually stump the orchard trees and let nature take its course through passive restoration, allowing the land to revert to its natural condition over time. The property would be available for wildlife-oriented recreation use all year long and is accessible by a public county road and a parking lot on the National Wildlife Refuge to the north, and would be managed by existing CDFW staff. Next slide, please. The property would support key species, including the federally threatened valley elderberry longhorn beetle and the state-threatened bank swallow. The banks of the Sacramento River support this declining bird population. Next slide, please. The purchase price of the property is $1,820,000. This is a fair market value established by an independent appraisal and approved by the Department of General Services. In closing, staff recommends approval of the project as proposed. And joining us online is Josh Bush with CDFW's North Central Region, who is also available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Are there any, is there anyone from the sponsor group that wants to present or make comments?
No, the landowner has agreed to the offer.
Sounds good.
Supported.
Okie dokie. Any questions from the board members? Okay, anyone in the room want to provide comment on this item? Not seeing anyone lining up. Do we have anyone in the virtual queue?
There are no raised hands.
All right, thank you. We'll bring it back up to the board. Does anyone want to make a motion, or do we have further discussion?
I'll move item 22.
Great,
I'll second.
perfect.
Chair Bonham, Vice Chair Nagami,
Aye.
Member Gear,
Aye.
Member Pavley,
Aye.
Member Peralt,
Aye.
Member Thomas.
Aye.
The motion passes.
Great.
Thanks, Kim.
Congratulations. Thank you.
And last but not least, this is actually my favorite project on the whole agenda, so pay attention, everyone. This is Alyssa Benedetti is going to tell us about the Eel River Trail accessible ramp.
You're not supposed to admit you have favorites.
Too bad. I like this one.
All right, this is a proposal for, for an infrastructure project to provide outdoor access for all by closing the accessibility gap for a recently completed multi-use trail located in the city of Rio Dell between the 101 freeway and the Eel River in Humboldt County. The project area lies within a severely disadvantaged community as defined by the DWR mapping tool. Next slide, please. The 1,600-foot Class 1 path provides scenic views of the Eel River and the Scotia Bluffs, which are a local landmark. Improved access to the river bar for fishing and recreation, and opportunities for nature-based education. The project also aligns with the Great Redwood Trail Master Plan, which seeks to create a 300-mile trail connecting Humboldt to San Francisco. Next slide, please. Funding for the Rio Del Trail was provided through a Caltrans Clean California grant for $2.3 million. The portion completed to date, which I'll be referring to as Phase 1, includes the trail itself, riparian protection and enhancement measures, interpretive kiosks, and a trailhead with parking at Edwards Drive, which is one end of the trail. However, due to inflation, that budget did not end up covering the entire intended project scope. And so the accessible ramp at the other end of the trail, the Davis Street trailhead, had to be deferred. Despite the setback, the trail was officially open to the public in June, and I have just a brief video that I feel like shows a really good overview of the work completed to date. Go ahead, Blake.
The Clean California Trail project here in Rio Del is transformative in taking an underutilized space and turning it into a non-motorized trail, the first one dedicated in Rio Del.
The trail gives us the ability as a community to enjoy the nature that is all around us. It's given us something to be proud of.
Many of the Clean California projects have beautified areas and opened them up to more public use, which deters vandalism and litter and dumping.
This is a great opportunity for Rio Del to come to love this space, to want to protect it, to collect litter, and to keep it clean.
First of all, kudos to the students. They learned all about the river. They learned about the ecosystem. They learned about the fish. And then they worked with the artists to get their art to mesh with his vision. And we see this as a result. And what art does, art just brings you together. And it just means so much to the community. And without art, we're just a blank canvas.
We want to thank our partnership with Governor Newsom, with Caltrans. We want to thank the Rio Del Elementary students. This trail is really for them and for the future of this community, the future of this state. And we're just really proud to be able to participate and help facilitate this project.
Okay, next slide, please. So the proposal before you today will construct Phase 2, a concrete switchback style ADA accessible ramp, which will replace this existing stairway down from Davis Street, which is in the top photo, along with the basic trailhead amenities at Davis Street. And this will complete the full scope of the project and ensure the trail can be accessed by everyone, including those with limited mobility. The staff recommends approval of the project as proposed. And if you have any questions, we're joined online by Kyle Knopp, who's the city manager of Rio Del.
Great, thank you so much. Any questions from board members? Jen, you want to tell us why this is your favorite project?
I like that we're making it accessible. I like that it's in a disadvantaged community, giving them more access to nature. I like when we can come in and solve a problem. And I like that we do public access projects like this. That's it.
Love it. What's not to like exactly? Do we have any, I don't see any public commenters in the room. Do we have anyone in the virtual queue?
Kyle Knopp has his hand raised.
Great.
You should be able to unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair and board members. My name is Kyle Knopp. I'm the city manager for the city of Rio Del. And we also are extremely excited about this project to provide accessibility to the Eel River. This is a really neat spot in the heart of the coastal Redwood area that needs more exposure, and I think helps to in a lot of different ways, both economically, both educationally for people to experience this location. So I just really quickly want to thank the board staff. Alyssa's been great. I want to thank my city staff and also our co-signers for letters of support, Congressman Jared Huffman, Senator Mike McGuire, Assemblymember Chris Rogers, Michelle Bushnell, who is the chair of the Humboldt County Board of Supervisors, and also our representative on the Board of Supervisors, and also Matthew Brady, the District 1 Director for Caltrans, who all wrote letters. And I'm available for any questions that you may have. Again, thank you for your time.
Thanks so much. I think that closes public comment. Any further questions, comments from the board or motion?
I'm happy to make the motion. I'm super excited for the connection with the Great Redwood Trail. That was my old stomping ground. So excited that Rio Dell has already moved forward on this piece that will connect to that massive trail system.
I'll second the motion.
Great, thank you. Let's call the roll, please, Mary. Thank you.
Vice Chair Nagami,
Aye.
Member Gear,
Aye.
Member Pavley,
Yes.
Member Perot,
Aye.
Member Thomas,
Aye.
motion passes.
Excellent, thank you. Congratulations. And we'll move on to the next.
So we're going to go into
Item.
closed session now, which means,
Do you want to do the board dates? Yeah,
did you already approve those? I'm kidding. All right, go ahead and do that. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump.
no worries. Item 24 on the agenda is the board meeting dates for 2026. The board is going to be asked to approve these dates. They are Thursday, February 26th, Thursday, May 28th, Thursday, August 27th, and Thursday, November 19th, 2026.
And I just want to point out that one of the reasons we're so far ahead, also to let the public know, but because getting this room, you have to basically kill somebody to get it. So we have to get the dates and hold them really tightly. Poor Mary does a lot of work to get those dates. We
Great.
didn't really kill anybody. Don't put that on the record.
So do we need a motion and a
Yeah,
vote?
go for
Everything? Okay.
Or you can do by consensus.
Yeah, it's just in case we'll just why don't we just do the roll call? I will move these dates to approval. Can I get a second?
Second.
Great, let's do a roll. Board Member Pearl.
Vice Chair Nagami,
Aye.
Member Gear,
Aye.
Member Pavley,
Aye.
Member Perot,
Aye.
Member Thomas,
Aye.
motion passes.
Okay, now we're going to closed session. So if you're in the room, thank you for coming. You don't have to hang around, but if you want to hear what we talked about in closed session, you'll get a very abbreviated readout, which will tell you nothing, but we'll appreciate your being here. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you everyone for coming. Great. Hello, are we back on? We are back from executive session and we're going to have a report out.
Yes, the board met in closed session to receive an update from its legal counsel and the Attorney General's office on the 3 existing cases that WCB is involved in that were listed in the agenda.
That's great. And I think with that, we are done. We're going to adjourn at 1:30 p.m. Thanks y'all for being here.
See you in San Diego.
See you in San Diego.
Yeah.